tonight. I need a motion to reconvene our public session.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? After the pledge, please remain standing for a moment of silence in honor of our servicemen and women.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. District Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Amorando?
Present.
Mr. Marioli?
Here.
Mrs. Ortlis? Present. Mr. Rabel?
Here.
Mrs. Kennedy? Dr. Adams? Present. Mr. Nucci?
Present.
Mrs. Donnelly is absent. Mrs. Manzi? Present. Mr. Middleman?
Present.
Patricia Arnie? Present. And Saba Bari?
Mara, yep, present.
And Nicholas Betty? Thank you.
Okay, we have to approve the minutes of the October 17, 2017 Business Audit Committee meeting. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We also need to approve the minutes of the November 7th, 2017 special meeting.
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're moving on to, okay, going back, we do have a change.
Consent agenda, item 3 needs to be removed. Table.
Item number 3 from the consent agenda needs to be removed or tabled?
Table.
Needs to be tabled. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, now we're going to move on to our recognitions and commendations.
Mr. Middleman, what are you doing down there? Mr. Middleman, come on out here.
Hold on one second.
We're going to recognize Dr. Mary Losing. Come on out, Dr. Losing. Do I really need the mic if I speak this loud?
You're
Okay,
good.
thank you.
Yeah.
I'll use my teacher voice. Okay. So we have a very blessed community in Connetquot. And one of the reasons why that is true is because we have wonderful kids, amazing parents, great teachers, and unbelievable administrators who care so much about what they do. And Dr. Losing, it seems that an organization of yours truly agrees with how wonderful you are. So I've known Dr. Losing, 20 plus years. We were science directors together when Dr. Losing was at Shoreham-Wading River. And she was a force majeure even back then. Loved science education, couldn't wait to do the best thing that she could for kids, and that has not changed. Unfortunately for Shoreham-Wading River, they lost her. We got her, and we are extremely pleased to be able to present this certificate that shows our appreciation for Dr. Losing, who was awarded the New York State Service Award at the November 4th Stadies Conference. Congratulations. Mrs. Park, can you take it up there? Come on up. All right.
Get presents back.
So Mrs. Parker, you won a grant from the Long Island Family Consumer Science Professional Association, and tell us what you did with that grant.
Okay, the grant that I was for, should I say the amount of money too?
Yeah.
It was for $250. I ordered workbooks that go along with this infant simulator. It's called the Reality Works, and I have 5 of them, so they get dispersed amongst the students for a weekend, so the parents get to experience it as well. And it's through my college class, which is through St. John's College Advantage programs, and students can actually earn college credits. She just could. You want to take her out?
Watch her head. She will drop her head. She will scream bloody murder. It is horrifying. It's something out of the
Yeah.
I have 3 kids. I think I know what I'm doing by now.
This isn't like a kid.
So I got workbooks that go along with the
It's the real way to live.
the unit, and then the baby comes along with this little wristband, and I had run out of them because you have to adjust each person's wrist individually. So with the workbooks I ordered extra bands. So that's my grant, and I'm very grateful to have gotten that. So I thought I'd bring one today, and Gianna.
It was my baby when I took the class.
Yes, she's taken it home several times.
Well, thank you for doing this extra.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's her name?
What's her name?
What's
What's
her
her
name?
name?
Cynthia.
It changes.
Gentlemen.
It changes. Cynthia.
I've met you 3 times. Really, Dean?
Feels very matches.
I am an addict. Let's see if Leah.
It'll scream bloody murder.
Hold his head, lady.
We're gonna pass it around. So be ready.
It's not a regular cry, it's literally like bloody murder.
Which one?
Oh my God, she's gonna do it. I'll do All right.
Congratulations.
No, you gotta, as if like shaking baby syndrome. Yeah.
We're not gonna shake the baby. Oh, man, that's just wrong. You got that on video?
Yeah.
Of course.
All right, so we're going to talk about wellness today.
You know that's on video. We have
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Park.
Can I just introduce it?
Come on up.
Okay.
Gail Santo, she's the director of PBS for the district. She spearheaded the first ever, community wellness day, which took place at the high school on October 21st. So I'm going to let her speak about that a little bit.
We just have to look forward to the essence of a very successful community effort, and we're hoping it's first of many. So if I can just call your attention, and where are our super helpers? If, ladies, if you could hand out the triforms to like contact numbers of the vendors that appear that day. We have trifolds for the audience. So if I just call your attention, on Saturday, October 21st, we had our first community collaborative effort, and we're here to recognize the wonderful service our students presented or participated and gave of their own time. We have both secondary students in the audience, and Dr. Adams will recognize them by name, as well as Duffield Elementary students. Raise your hand, even though I bet you can't guess who you are. Okay. Duffield, you're, the shortest one, not the youngest, the shortest. And that's only, this is only those that are available. We've had approximately 24 students spending the entire day. And Mrs. Figueroa, you could say, rather than saying follow the yellow brick road, what did I say all day? Follow the yellow shirts, because it were the students that were sporting our vendors. So let me just give you an essence of what the day was, what the aim of the day was, and I believe we successfully met. If our 4 components of wellness, the target was mental, physical, nutritional, and holistic components in wellness. That's what we aim to promote in the school community, because we believe in teaching to the whole child. We also aim to provide the same supports to families to help better serve their children. And we also provide it for our staff and our community at large. So what the venture was to have various vendors, both locally and in the vicinity, not just in the Connetquot community, but neighboring districts, Sayville. But as far as Port Jeff, and I'm happy and very proud to tell you, through the due diligence of our staff and committee members, more than 40 vendors participated. And you will see them listed in the trifold. And those are just a few. Nutritionish, and when they participated, not only did they volunteer their time, but they donated their wares and had handouts and resources available for the community. So there was a lot of dialogue, and if you can envision the gym in the high school open with the big triangle and balloons and a round robin of people collaborating and networking, it was a wonderful day. Can any of the students tell me what Kaboom was? Does anyone remember hearing Kaboom down the hall? Yes, he was a very cool man teaching exercise and dancing, right? You see, it was wonderful. So we'll show you a picture, but that's just a snippet of the vendors that participated. And they came as early as 8 o'clock in the morning and they stayed till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And look who we have here. Those are our very talented carrot, green grapes, purple grapes, and where's my peacock? I love the peacock. Here she is. And these very beautiful students have wonderful personalities, ran outside, tried to encourage people to come in.
Bless you.
Even stood at the corner, tried to corral cars coming in. The only disadvantage of this very successful day is it was 74 degrees and sunny outside. We couldn't compete with that, but we still had a couple of hundred people attend. We had a couple of hundred people attend, and where are my 2 clippers? Are they here? We had Danny's out, and never did she frown. She stood at that door for 2.5 hours cooking every time a person came in. And when they came in, I said, "Did you get them?" Right? And she said, "Yes, I did." So very wonderful. And you can see the gentlemen on the right, those were our escorts. Every time the vendor came in the morning, they escorted them from the main door and took them through the halls of the gym. Now this, the student participation, this is the Duffield Elementary Initiative. Now this, ladies and gentlemen, is intriguing because it's a collaborative effort between the classroom teacher, Miss Kramer, who is here, hello Miss Kramer, and Miss Bassani, who is here, YFS coordinator of Duffield, and also Mr. Schaefer. Butner, well, I don't know, might forgive me. But it is a self-sustaining garden, and it's organic, and it is, as you can see, it started as little seedlings, and you couldn't even see them. And it was shipped in, purchased in part by PPS, and also from a awarded seed grant. And if this moves forward, we're hoping that we can expand this in this elementary, because there's no better way to teach the children by hands-on experiencing. experiences and also the fruits of their labor. And this is literally not fruit, but it is organic foods of their labor, which we shall give you a sample of at the end of the meeting. But if you look at the right, not only was this impressive, the students reported to the community. Anyone that questioned how did this develop, how was this framed, how do you take care of it, right students? Who's responsible for taking care of it at the building? Who will ensure that it's working?
We have a community tester in our class who goes with Mr. Buckner every day or so to down and tests the pH and improves the water.
Excellent. And who monitors the growth of the plants? Do you love that? That is, and everything. And who assesses the growth of the plant?
We have a pH test.
Okay, wonderful. So we're going to show you. Remember, these started as seedlings. And this canister is taller than I am. Okay, so it doesn't give it justice. So thank you, Duffield Elementary. And then, remember the cool man? Remember the cool man, girls? That's what I was talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, if you saw the parents trying to take a peek in the doorway, the music was radiating down the hallway. He was very engaging. The silence doesn't give it justice, but look at how young. We had a 3-year-old in there trying to dance. Now, he wasn't maybe as coordinated, but the effort and participation was there. This went on for 2 hours. And this man was so well received, he will be visiting us again in February, because that is part of physical health, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And then, look at this, yoga and meditation. These are our YFS coordinators, who also happen to be yoga teachers. And we have children on the left actually participating in meditation. We have a little youngster on the right attempting a yoga move, as well as in the center. We had classes every 40 minutes. And then presentations, very key. The Holistic Medical Wellness Center in Port Jefferson is to be credited for donating much of the wares, much of their time, and all free of charge, because their spirit is that community center, and they wanted to enhance the wares provided for this day, as well as the networking opportunity. Holistic Medical Wellness, they presented on a holistic approach to pain management, and then also a conversation about toxins in the community, which spearheads inflammation and other symptoms people are having in today's world that perhaps weren't in existence years ago because of all the preservatives and et cetera that is in our foods today that was not available years ago. There's much research on it. So much emphasis on organic eating. Also, free hearing screenings were provided, and if this isn't enough, 3 people were diagnosed as having deficit hearing, and they didn't have to pay. So they left with the screening, and then they were directed to go to a doctor. So that is the community serving the community. And then similarly, we had members from Connetquot Cares providing free face painting, and they were painting all day. And we had children walking around with butterfly faces and dragons, and the Masters of the Universe were very popular, but it was very sweet. And also very impressively, do you see Heartbeat? That was a truck that gave away free organic soup. And Mr. Figueroa, do you remember what was the soup type? I forgot. Was it squash?
I don't remember. I did not have any.
Squash. But, okay, butternut squash, someone said, with the whole hallway permeated of spice and cinnamon. It was wonderful, and that was stationed next to the Tower Garden. And then next to that, if you see all the foods, that was displayed. Those are all organic foods and yoga cups, and the staff prepared for an hour and a half, preparing small cups for as many as several hundred people. So very generous, and these were all contributions. No, we didn't juice, but what we did is have the naked, let me say the naked truth, it's a naked, it is a naked.
It's just naked.
Oh, naked, the drink. We didn't actively juice on premise, but that is a healthy drink, no sugars, no preservatives, and we have 4 different flavors. And then we have various fruits, and we have various organic oatmeal and, what's that called? Grains. I forgot the name of it. But, granola, thank you. I'm still losing my thought from it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, look at the growth of the Tower Garden. And that was only a month after we purchased it. And it was set up at the beginning of October. So without further ado, I would like to invite Ms. Kramer and her students to give samples of their very delicious self-grown lettuce. Right? Thank you very much. And if there are no questions, I would like to recognize our students.
So
Thank
here
you.
are our volunteers. Alexis Falco, are you here? It was approved, Dr. I know you were approved. Marissa Capote. Eric. Victoria Guevara. Sarah Giannieri. Really close. Riley Murphy. Joanne Castelvetti. Sarah Forster. Logan O'Connor. Zachary Dira. James Marcos. Emma Langston. Taylor Bornship. Nick Werner.
Thank you very much.
Katie Mills.
We'll find you after.
Paige. I don't know if it's Sapienza or Sapienza. Giovanna De Niro. Sophia Sachs. And Ava Ross.
Monica, can you hold that up? I want to zoom in on
Thank
that.
you all for volunteering to help make our community a better place to be, because that's really what we're trying to do every day. So thank you all for your volunteering. Thank you so much. Oh, do I have Dan here?
Yeah, I'm here. Did you want to take
Come
one?
on, Dan.
All right.
Take a picture of all the volunteers. And all my my salads. Come on. I'm gonna hold my salad. Yeah, go ahead.
Smells good.
Thanks, Dan.
And I know where you're from too. I will count that.
Oh, no, I'm good, thank you. Yeah. You're a little late.
I thought most not about like glasses, you know.
Don't worry about it. Perfect.
Olivia, did you make it today? No, okay, so then I'm going to ask our Girl Scouts troop to come on forward. It's on. Oh, it's on. Welcome, girls.
Hi. Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to attend your meeting. We are the Girl Scouts from Troop 1241, and we are here to represent to our proposal for our Silver Awards. Although we are doing one presentation to save time, we are actually seeking the board's approval to do two separate and distinct Silver Award projects. Each group doing a project consists of 5 members of our troop. Our Silver Award is to install 2 buddy benches at Cherokee Street Elementary School. Buddy benches are a wonderful addition to any playground or schoolyard. A buddy bench is an idea to create friendship on the playground. The buddy bench can inspire peer support and introductions in school life. As Girl Scouts, one of our main goals is to make a positive impact on our community. We feel that buddy benches will help reduce bullying and maybe encourage friendships to make. The friends they have now will affect the kids as they grow older. Our main goal is to leave a positive impact as the kids get older and older, go into adults. The cost of the buddy bench is as follows. The benches cost $170 per bench. The shipping is $85 per bench. We would like to install custom plaques, which will also cost approximately $200 per plaque. If the troop is approved to install the benches ourselves, we expect the cost to be $100 per bench. The final piece of our project is to create a presentation during DASA week at Cherokee that will inform the students about the buddy benches and why we decided to donate.
What grade are you girls in?
8.
All of you are in 8th grade? Did you attend different elementary schools?
No, our troop has been together since they were in first grade at Cherokee, with the addition of Bridget, who her brothers and sisters go to Cherokee. So they've all grown up in the Cherokee community, and when asked what they wanted to do for their Silver Award, they all wanted to give something back to their elementary school.
Do you have an idea where you want to place the benches? Like
We do. We'd like to place, one of the groups of 5 girls would like to place a bench. Girl Scouts will only approve Silver Awards for up to 5 cadets at a time. So one group will be specifically working on the kindergarten playground area, and the other will be working on the older playground area. We'd like to put one in each. And they will be the same bench in both, so that it's very clear when the kindergartners move up to first grade, second grade, third grade, that that's still the buddy bench that they learned about in kindergarten.
nice.
I like the idea of the dedication of you presenting.
Very nice.
And we fundraised, we have all the money needed to do this. They did, they sell nuts and cookies, and we also had a big garage sale. So
what-
it's really hard.
So what are you guys describing on the, you mentioned a subscription?
It's written on the bottom.
Yeah, it's right here.
That will be the file.
Here, one.
Oh, very cool, I like that. That's very cool.
And that's the picture of the bench that we'd like to donate. They're red benches with black, like feet, and the back of it will be black, so it'll match the school colors with the plaques.
How do they get? Do they just sit on the ground, or they?
Well, there are two options. Either we can do the benches that have the poles that would be cemented into the ground, or we could do the benches on a cement platform and just have them bolted in. That would be dependent on what the district would
Okay, so
prefer.
the gentleman back there
I was
is
gonna say,
really
John,
tall.
how can we help with
That's
this,
Mr.
John?
Allen.
John, how can we,
And he would be the person you would speak to.
how can we help, John?
All I need to do, I'll pass out a card for them on the way out of here. So at the next meeting, or however they want to get together and communicate it, I can go over all that kind of stuff, and we can facilitate anything such as putting the concrete pad once we have the dimensions. All that kind of stuff is very, very easy for facilities to take care of.
We can help them out with that and then get it secured so that it doesn't
We
disappear.
wanna make sure it's safe. That's okay. We wanna make sure it's safe for the children sitting
Yeah,
on it.
absolutely, safe and
Yes,
doesn't
it's two
disappear.
options. Either
I don't want that.
Can you put that picture over here? Actually getting the legs that go into the ground.
bench.
Yeah, whatever they
We
feel
put
is
the
safest.
picture of the one with the feet.
Sure.
Either way, it's about the same cost.
No, that's great. So we can help with the, with the putting it,
That would be great.
What is the coating on the bench? What's the coating?
It's a rubberized coating over metal.
Okay, and how long does that usually last?
Yeah, we did the rice coating so it like won't rust.
It's similar to the benches that are outside of the middle school.
That's what I, yeah, that's what I
Very
figured.
similar to
Okay,
those, because
cool.
we figured those would be sturdy and they would last for a long time.
No, it's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, that's
And we didn't
wonderful.
go with the ones with the ends because we were worried about the kids are running around. We went with more of a streamlined bench that's rounded on the edges so that the hope is kids will be playing around these, including kids, so we didn't want.
Girls, that's fantastic.
That's
They
great.
have a 7-year limited warranty,
Okay,
the ones
there you
that
go.
we're looking at.
That's fantastic,
Great job.
girls.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you
can
so
coordinate all
much.
that. Thank you very
you.
much. Say again?
Do you want to keep the board or you want us, should we take?
You know what, maybe keep it so you can put it in Cherokee, so everybody can see kind of, we display in Cherokee what's happening, what you guys do. So, maybe we can coordinate that with Ms. Lake.
With Ms. Leahy, yes,
Yeah.
we've already spoken with her, she's
Yeah, give her the presentation, and
She's
they can put it
absolutely
somewhere in the
awesome.
building and show everybody what you guys are doing, it's awesome.
perfect.
And John will give you his card, and he'll help you out.
Thank you,
Good stuff,
ladies.
thank you, girls. That's awesome. Very good, great job, ladies.
So it doesn't appear that Olivia could be here tonight, but she is also working on her Cadet Silver Award, and she would like to donate also to the Cherokee Street School, Take a Book, Give a Book, which is a little mini library that people, once they're done reading books, can put in this little house, and another person can take one out and read it, and then put it back so someone else can enjoy that book. So that will also be on tonight's agenda for you to vote on the acceptance of that gift as well.
That's a little library, right?
Yes.
We were just saying that.
Because they, once you register with them too, they post where
Yeah,
the
they
little
do.
libraries are. I love it. I want one in front of my house.
She told she would make it tonight.
All right, moving on to our student government report. Hello,
So you're
hello.
gonna go up there? So you can sit here if you want to address everybody. All right. More. All right. Less people to stare at, right?
Safe Halloween was this past October, great success. We were going over numbers of 400 trick-or-treaters attended, and we had a great start to a food drive. We filled, I think, maybe 6 or 7 containers just from Safe Halloween, and then all of the volunteers there received their junior service hours. We'd like to thank you to those who attended this year's homecoming pep rally, great success at that event as well. And then we are also excited to send our Connetquot girls varsity volleyball team to states after winning the Long Island Championship. We also have Freshman Awareness Weekend this Friday. Yeah, so 4 days. Very excited, everything's good to go, and it's you guys should have, according to Ms. Goodman, gotten your formal invitations
I'll be
from
there.
her. Good. Okay. Yeah, she just want to make sure that those got through. And then before Saba gives her part of the report, I just want to give Ms. Adams and Ms. Alvarez your homecoming shorts.
Oh,
Thank you for
yes.
coming. We really didn't do that well against the seniors, though, I have to say. Even though you guys
Thank you.
wore there. on the other end. We totally cheated.
I saw that.
The adults
I saw
cheated. We did.
Come on, Linda, we did great on that.
About having pet rally during the day.
There's always going to be kids who leave for doctor's appointments, but overall it was pretty good, to be honest.
We're looking into the massive epidemic that happened that afternoon, but aside from that.
I gotta tell you, I had such a good time with you guys at the Save Halloween. That was so much fun, seeing the little guys, you guys, the older kids.
Yeah, we ended up getting a lot of emails from parents complimenting us and saying how much their kids enjoyed the event and all that.
Oh, I had a good time. I was gonna come for like 20 minutes, I was over there over an hour, right?
Yeah.
I saw all the kids, it was wonderful. So great job to all the volunteers, it was great.
Left on the report is the Civic is working with Mrs. Hanoi to provide volunteers and DJ for the Winter Festival at RMS for the ENL population. The Civic is excited to support SEPTA by encouraging our members to go to a movie called Wonder on November 25th. Along with that, the Civic is also prepping for Relay right after Thanksgiving, so we're excited for that as well. The executive board members of the Civic will be attending the Winter Wonderland at OBMS to get a better understanding of the event and to see if it should come up to the high school next year. That's it.
I can tell you, I went to that last year at the OBMS. I thought it was gonna be just a little something. When I
They went all out.
What?
Did they go all out?
I pulled up and I'm like, wait a minute, it was gorgeous. Did you go see it last year? It was gorgeous and fantastic job to John Tedeschi and his team there. It was wonderful.
So our plans are, if we can, to bring it up to high school. So we're going to attend that to see how it is.
Just really see how it is.
Yeah.
You guys should definitely attend. I had a great time.
Yes.
Turn your microphone on, Lee.
What do you think of 10 hours of mandated community service a year when you graduate?
You're talking to the wrong kids though.
Oh goodness.
I have my 10 until graduation if you'd like. But I was actually on the committee for the advancement of education as well as Saba last year during school. We would meet after school, all the class officers and members of student government, and we discuss things like this. I'm in support of the hours of community service. Quite honestly, I feel like in general, I don't see any downside to having an increased involvement from students in the community. I personally have done it, plenty of times now. Honestly, no, not everyone is going to love community service. However, I feel that if we can get kids to be more involved in the community, it'll definitely benefit them as well as the community. And another idea that we had was to also, instead of just counting community service hours in a volunteer type setting, it was almost a point system that we were thinking of for a little bit, or at least I had researched it, where even just being a part of a club is worth however much, and then you could possibly get hours towards those 10 just from that. Even if you're not in a volunteer setting, it gets you more involved in things throughout the building, and there are plenty of clubs within the building that just because you're joining, you will also be going into the community and doing things. So I really don't see any downside to adding that.
Well said.
I-
Very good. I need a motion to suspend the business meeting. Motion. Second. All in favor? Motion is needed to move into the audit committee meeting. Motion. Second. Second, all in favor? Aye. So we, that's it? Yeah. Any questions? Does anyone have any questions? I just need a motion then to accept the correction action plan. Motion. Second? All in favor? Aye. That's it? All right. Need a motion and a second to adjourn. Motion. Second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Now I need a motion and a second to move back into the business. Motion. Second. All in favor? Aye. Alright, so. New business. How many items do we have? No discussion. Okay, so the first one
Connetquot High School academic results.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce 4 of our curriculum directors. Dr. Mary Lawson, who you met earlier. She is our STEM chairperson. Ms. Margaret Ronai, who is our Director of Social Studies and Business. Mrs. Christina Poppy, who is our Director of ELA and Libraries. And Ms. Louise Berger, who is our Director of Mathematics. They're going to present this evening our Regents results as well as some of our AP results, as well as talk about some of the things that we've done in the past and some of our goals moving forward.
Welcome.
How are you?
Welcome.
So, you all have the presentation.
High school analysis.
High school analysis, mathematics, percent. First slide. You want to see it? Here are our Regents results for the past 3 years. These are our percent passing results. I'd like to take a look at the hot topic of geometry. So if we can take a look at that column there, we have a 72% passing rate. So 72% pass rate. The Eastern Suffolk BOCES region had a 70% pass rate for that exam this past year. So, although not where we want it to be, but it's moving in the positive direction.
Can we ask questions along the way, or should we wait till the end?
If you could wait till the end, that would be
Gotcha.
awesome.
The end of each subject.
Yeah. Yes.
For both Common Core Algebra 1 and Common Core Algebra 2, we are at or above the Eastern Suffolk BOCES average for that as well. We turn to the next page. Our percent mastery rate for the 3 exams. Common Core Algebra last year was at 32%. Eastern Suffolk BOCES average was 24%. Our Common Core Geometry was at 11%. Eastern Suffolk BOCES was at 12%. I'm going to go back to that in a second.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah.
Yep, I'm going to go back to that in a moment. Common Core Algebra 2, ours was at 10%, and the Eastern Suffolk BOCES average was at 17%. This is an area of focus that I've been working with the teachers on for Algebra 2. We've been analyzing the results from last June's Regents exam by standard and where we need to make improvements. If we head back to the geometry column, what's different between what we do here at Connetquot versus other school districts in the Eastern Suffolk BOCES region? All of our students take geometry Regents. So after they take algebra, everyone's moving on to geometry. We don't have a non-Regents track. Our expectation is that all students achieve an advanced Regents diploma, or at least head in that direction. The only exception would be the 2-year self-contained Algebra 1 track. But all of our students do take geometry. Okay. Next page would be our AP results. AP Calculus, AP Calculus AB, first column. We do have a dip from 3.36 in 2016 to 2.37 in 2017. However, I'd like to talk about the number of students achieving, or actually sitting in the classroom, and the number of tests that were written. In 2016, we had 25 students sit for the AB exam, and 40 students enrolled in the course. In 2017, we had 73, that's nearly triple the amount of exams written, and 90 students taking that AB course. So the trend is to move towards an experience for students prior to heading off to college, having that AP experience. As that 2.37 is, or actually our 3-year, is in line with the New York State average as well. So there was that bump in 2016. I don't know if it had to do with the actual exam itself,
but there was that bump in New York State as well. Moving along to calculus BC. We've been pretty steady with the number of tests written, 21 to 22 over the 3 years, and the number of students in the course has been quite steady as well. We are above the New York State average for BC calculus. AP Computer Science, we went up a little bit from last year to this past year, and we are above the New York State average with that as well.
What's computer science? Is it a class computer science?
It's a course, yes.
Oh, it's a course, okay.
Yes. It's one of the two AP and computer science classes. It's AP Computer Science, actually A.
Oh, okay.
Last year, we had 22 students sit for the exam, which is quite a bunch. We had 23 students enrolled, so one student chose not to sit for the exam. And the years prior to that, we had 9 students sitting and 11 students sitting. So again, same trend as the rest of the courses. Students are taking the course and sitting for the Regents exam, which is wonderful. Last column, AP Statistics. 2015, we were at 2.8. I'll explain 2016 in a moment. And 2017 was at 2.67. Now, this course over the past 3 years has increased enrollment from 2 sections to 3 sections to 5 sections this year. That would be 2018. So in 2015, we had 5 students sit for the exam. And in 2017, we had 15 students sit for the exam. That course is co-seated with an Excelsior course through Suffolk Community College. So students have the opportunity to earn 3 to 6 credits. So in the fall, they can apply for the credit. So it's just like a college semester course. They get the first 3 credits for the fall semester. If they choose to purchase and to enroll again for the spring semester, they have the opportunity to earn another 3 credits.
That's really good.
So let me talk about that for a moment. I wasn't able to get the data for 2015, but in 2016, we had 31 out of the 41 students enrolled in the class applied for the Excelsior credit. So it's a minimum of 3 credits, maximum of 6. In 2017, that number doubled. We had 62 students applied in the fall for the 3 credits, and 81 students take the course altogether. And this year, our enrollment in that course is up to 124. And so far this year, just for the fall semester, 100 students, or 101 students have applied for Excelsior credit.
So let me ask you something. I love the numbers, but what got the kids interested in doing this?
So I'm gonna just jump in.
I'm just excited because this is good stuff.
So if you remember back when Mr. Costa presented the Futuring project for the high school, one of the major tenets of that is to ensure that our students have an experience in a college level course. The directors, myself, we've done a tremendous amount of work with a couple of things that have changed. One was we wanted to look at enrollment and make sure that our students were having the opportunity to take those advanced placement courses that are eligible to do that. All right? And we've seen a drastic increase in all of our AP classes across the board at the high school. The second thing was a practice that was changed at the high school where we had, if you look and heard back to what Ms. Berger said, is that we had students who were taking the course but not sitting for the exam. They're not eligible for the designation of an AP course. One of our, again, pushes this year, over the past 2 years, has been the requirement of, in order to get the designation as well as the college credit, you must sit for the exam. And you'll see a drastic increase in the number of students who are writing exams at our high school. And I think when you look at it from a global perspective, it is a trend that is consistently moving forward through each of the content areas of the high school. And I want to credit Ms. Berger for a second. She came to me earlier this year with an idea of developing a consortium with another school district. We partnered with Sayville, and we've had one meeting so far where our math teachers and Sayville's math teachers got together, spoke about best practices, shared different strategies and things that are working, different offerings that they're having in their classes. And one of the things that we did find out is that we are fortunate to make sure that all of our students experience Regents geometry. And that's what we're finding across Eastern Suffolk BOCES, is that there are districts that are, after algebra, that are separating their kids out. into a non-Regents track. And we want to give our children the best experience possible from an academic and a social and emotional perspective. So, thank you.
Thank you. And also, the increased enrollment in the, you asked me, Violet, about the AP Computer Science, the AP Statistics course. That's a course that if students aren't pursuing a technical career, wanting to take a calculus course, might feel more comfortable taking the AP Statistics course. You can also co-seat in 11th grade AP Statistics with pre-calc honors. It's a great combination. And then in 12th grade, take either AP Calculus or BC Calculus. So for students who have two math experiences.
All right, so let me follow you. So they would take this, when is this?
You have the opportunity, depending on where you are in your course of study, to take AP Statistics in 11th grade. We do have 11th graders co-seating AP Statistics and pre-calculus honors.
So is that kids on the accelerated track, or is it kids?
Yes,
on the
they would be accelerated, they would be a year ahead.
Okay. So the kids.
So we're seeing more, it used to only be a senior course, where you would take AP Stats or one of the calculus courses, but now we're saying it's okay to co-seat and take 2 math classes at the same time.
Okay, so my daughter's doing trig now, so next year she would have the option of doing.
Microphone.
She would have the opportunity, yes.
To do one of the two.
She can do both.
Wow. And but the one will give you the Suffolk credits, the statistics.
The statistics, yes.
Very cool.
Grade
Does it
6
apply to
credits.
Stony Brook or the other CUNY or SUNYs?
Most Excelsior credit is accepted. We obviously tell the students that if they're looking at a particular school before they purchase the credits, to check with the school admissions office.
Oh, great, thank you.
And also the teachers push, to really explain the course following that. And to say that, yes, you're able to do this, so they are recommending more students to the courses, and students are sticking with it, which is a great thing. Next slide. In 2016-17, some of the things that we were working on were a new resource for grades K through 5. And again, that resource was to enhance what we are trying to project to the middle school and to the high school level. Hands-on approach to mathematics, constructivist approach as well. We worked over the summer with the K through 6 writing project, and some of our 9 through 12 courses were also looked at. And we continued with professional development throughout the 2016-17 year. For 2016, our current year, 2017-18, we have a new resource for grade 6. We have the next generation standards were adopted. However, we probably will not see any change in Regents exams until the year 2021. So it's so far ahead of us, and the changes are slight. However, we are starting to talk about it already within our department. We're going to obviously continue the professional development along middle school and high school to support the changes that are happening with the next gen standards. And we are exploring a computer science academy and some new computer science courses.
Very cool. So going back to the first slide, so Algebra 2, before prior to Connetquot, it was 59% passing rate. And then now we're on Commendations 2, and it's 95 and 92% rate. So that's pretty drastic. I mean, in a good way.
It's just going to go into a completely different exam. And in 2015, the last time Algebra 2 and Trig was given, we had a majority of students try to get in under that old exam because of fear of what was coming. They didn't know what was heading their way. So we had more students sitting for that exam as well.
So now that I know that you guys had the rough geometry Regents this year, going forward, I mean, because I could tell from some students when they took that geometry Regents, they feel kind of burnt coming out of that. So are we going to see, I mean, I know you can't predict this, but...
I can, because we were, I can. I was just at a math meeting that we had, the gentleman, his name is escaping me, I know it's Anderson, I don't remember his first name, who is actually in charge of writing their geometry Regents exam up in Albany. He came to our consortium meeting about a month and a half ago, and it was a room full of math coordinators who were not letting this gentleman go without giving him, all of our feedback in a nice and kind, gentle way. But some of the feedback that was given was, please do not duplicate the January Regents exam, which is upcoming for geometry, without looking at several things. The reading level, So he suggested that we give him some reading specialists to bring up to Albany to go over the exam before it's copied. They already published that they're getting rid of one of the two 6-point questions, which were even up in the last month, the more difficult and rigorous type questions. And that they have looked over again the multiple choice responses to make sure that there was a clear, definitive answer. Those are some of the things that we've already told them that they need to look at. We can't put kids through this again. So I am anticipating this January Regents exam to be fair.
So what are your thoughts between last year's and this past Regents and prior Regents? What were your thoughts on the two? I know it seems to be very different, the geometry Regents, right? As far as the way it was formulated,
I'm not clear.
Okay, so we have the 2017 Regents, and then you have the 2016. So looking at both tests, obviously there was many flaws on the test, but what did you see as far as, I guess, counting on the multiple choice parts, and then also the second part? Did you see a drastic change in the two tests?
Well, I think what the department analyzed, obviously, the geometry Regents after grading it and having some feedback time for it, and then addressing it again in September with the group. A lot of the questions at the beginning of the exam were difficult, and that just killed a lot of the students' just hope, and they had a difficult time getting through the part one, which by the time they got to the extended response questions, they were they were confused because, as you know, 3 of the questions were recalled for issues with multiple choice. So I guess, at that point, it was pretty much just getting through part one was difficult for the kids.
That test has always been a beast. The kids come out of algebra and then they get hit with geometry. It's always been more difficult than the algebra.
Yeah, I've been hearing that. That's why I was asking if you could compare the last 2 Regents. I mean, obviously this one's a very flawed test. Did you find the one the year before a little bit more fair, or even that wasn't so fair?
That wasn't so fair. We've had some issues in the past with some of the Common Core exams, even the algebra in, I think it was 2016, there was a question that came out of left field. And, we opened the book and went, where we had discussion about it before actually looking at the answer key. So how is a student with a timed exam, with the pressure, with the heat and everything else going to perform well on that? So and those are some of the things that we brought up.
Not only, Mylan, is the geometry exam more difficult, the algebra, the scoring curve on that exam.
Yeah,
I think you have to know 35% of the material correctly in every test.
And that was another thing brought up to the gentleman up at say that is, don't put us in that situation where the rubric doesn't, the conversion scores aren't really making sense. I mean, if you take a look at them, they're just...
Yeah, I noticed that too. It didn't seem, I couldn't make heads or tails of that. I agree with that.
Louise, I'm all for challenging kids. What do you do with the 28% that weren't successful on the geometry exam? What's next for them?
What's next for them? They have the option to retake the exam, obviously, in January. We are going to provide some support for them. Some parents have already contacted me over the summer. Some of our students did take it over the summer and pass. So it's not as high as that. And then we're going to obviously support the students that are currently registered.
Are the majority of them passing the course and just not passing the exam?
No, because some of them failed the course and failed the reading, so they're back in geometry repeating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's the cost for the credits?
Can you put your microphone on, Nick?
I-
The cost of the credits for the Excelsior?
I believe for 3 credits, it's 153.
Oh, okay, so it's...
Yeah, it's worth
Oh,
it.
it's well, yeah,
Yeah.
I knew it was low, I just was curious what it is now.
Yeah, but the AP is normally, 90 to take the test, or have...
1995, I think, went up
something like that,
recently.
yeah. Oh, yeah, that's big time, yeah.
Yeah, and 6 credits. That was $2. Anyone else have any questions?
Thank you, Louise, that was very informative.
Thank you.
Thank
We're going to turn over to Barry.
I'd like to share with you our historical results for the Regents exam in ELA, Common Core version. Because we're looking at this sort of 3-year span in time, we still have our 2015 results from the Comprehensive English Regents exam, which is the former English Regents exam, no longer in existence. So currently we have 2 data points for our student success on the Common Core version. You can see 2017 was a banner year again. 97% of our students passed the exam. And in terms of mastery, we were near where we were in the prior year. On the following slide, you'll see that our students, 75% of our students earned an 85 or higher on the exam. Quite impressive results, I do say so myself. Because we only have the Singleton exam in ELA, I'm moving right into our AP historical data. In terms of our 11th grade course, which is the AP language course, and our 12th grade course, AP literature, our results for 2017 were both above the state average for AP results in each one of those subject areas. We are experiencing an interesting kind of uptick in the number of students who have written these exams, I think in part because of that shift that was discussed previously in terms of awarding that AP credit to students who are enrolled in the course and kind of see the entire process through and write the exam eventually. So that's encouraging. We had 86 students write for AP language in 2017 and 68 write for AP literature. Same slide. And beyond this, where we've been and where we're going, of course, we look at this data department-wide, and I share it with the middle school department as well, you know, as kind of a glimpse at where their students have gone. We articulate curriculum, both horizontally across grade levels and vertically between grade levels in the high school and, of course, in our middle schools as well, in order to prepare students for the exam, for them to meet the challenges, the expectations that the state sets forth. And we achieve that through continued professional development. The district has been incredibly generous, and I believe I said this last year, in terms of allowing for teachers to seek that professional development through the BOCES and through different organizations and opportunities for them to learn from colleagues and professionals in the field. And I thank you for that support and that generosity. But more importantly, they've been learning from each other. And some of the best PD that I've been part of in that building, particularly the high school, around those Regents results, is when teachers are able to come together and really talk about what they're doing in their classrooms to bring out the best in their students. And we've luckily had the opportunity to engage in those discussions across every grade level in the high school. And of course, that's happening in the middle school with the extended professional development that I've talked about to all of you with Sarah Cordova. That is continuing to happen this year, including the sharing of this information and comparing this information and our practices to these next generation standards in ELA. Ours were adopted simultaneously with the math standards. The good news is that they aren't drastically different from the Common Core standards. And Regent Elise came to speak with the ELA consortium and gave us some perspective in terms of what we can expect for upcoming exam periods, etc. On behalf of my teachers, I asked him whether there would be any foreseeable change to the English Regents exam, in that we've just gone through a transition. And he said eventually, he said right now, we are just really focusing on our 3 through 8 exams, and so we're not prepared to talk about the high school just yet. Our standards, though, aren't really changed as much as they are kind of renegotiated and realigned. There's a beautiful aspect to the new standards, and I'm going to use the word beautiful because there's a page and a chart in those standards that talk about lifelong practices of readers and writers. And those practices were nowhere included in conceptually or literally in the Common Core standards. And so some of our work departmentally since September 11th or September 12th, when those standards became public, has been around really kind of looking at and appreciating what we do against those lifelong practices as well as kind of, again, unearthing some of the structural shifts that are present in those new standards. But we're not looking at these huge waves of change in ELA, which is comforting, but certainly, again, engenders conversation that is important and absolutely necessary amongst the teachers. We are in the process of lifting off, I would say we've lifted off now, our Ek5 Literacy Initiative. And I didn't include this in the slide, but this is an opportunity to speak about it, certainly. So we have our units of study in writing work with all of our teachers in K through 5, including our smallest small class teachers. In effect, at this point, it's thrilling. The teachers are doing a tremendous amount of heavy lifting and challenging themselves and their students, and they're seeing growth, which is the most exciting part. But I have to talk about, again, just the amount of effort that they're investing, whether they're a brand new teacher or a seasoned teacher, in doing this work. So truly, it's inspiring to be part of their discussions and part of their learning. And that is, of course, accomplished through our district consultants, which, again, thank you for that support as well. We're very lucky to be able to offer monthly professional development to our elementary teachers, which is, in terms of what I've seen, generous and well needed. It's a constant revisitation of this work, which is healthy. And speaking of revisitation, Sarah Cordova's work with our middle school students is continuing. In grades 6, 7, and 8, we've written locally developed units of study according to the 3 major text types, the 3 major genres of writing, and those particular lessons are up and running in our ELA classrooms in both middle schools. So exciting times ahead, a real focus and concentration on writing, an eventual real focus on reading. Right now we're kind of entering that realm in a way that is, I think, appropriate in terms of what we're asking teachers to do already with writing. And we'll continue with that plan in the future. That's essentially where we are.
So I just want to thank Ms. Poppy and Ms. Abraham for their leadership with regards to our curriculum initiative in writing. And I think we're starting to see some of the positive outgrowth at the high school level with the quality of the student work. We're going to do a presentation and update to the board of where we are sometime hopefully in December or January. Our goal is to bring in some samples of student work so you can see the evidence for yourself. It's really exciting to go to we have these cross-district conversations per grade levels. It's really exciting to go in. Teachers are bringing samples of their student work. They're bringing the rubrics that go along with the units. They're talking about grading. They're talking about the excitement that they have from students who, at certain points in the beginning of the school year or last year, couldn't write, and who are now putting together multiple small moments into one piece of writing. Mr. Pollack shared a student's writing with me a couple weeks ago, and it brings you to tears to see not only the quality of the writing, but the personalization that this child brought to the writing piece itself.
So was it the use of words and understanding the use of the words, of the more high caliber words?
It's the vocabulary, it's the language, it's the process of, writing is not a product. And I think that we are seeing that process writing K through 8 right now alive, and that's been the biggest success for us.
For some of our students, it's drawing their story, and illustration is writing, right? So for our youngest students, they're writing through illustration. And the real excitement comes at an individual level, right? So we have, for instance, one example where a child wrote in his narrative portion the letter T over and over and over again. And what he was doing was articulating the sound of the train on the track in his story. And for that teacher and for that child, major milestone. And the beauty of the approach and the resource is that Lucy Calkins, through her work, recognizes that as real and true progress, and we kind of were able to look at where that child sits in a larger continuum in terms of grade level standards and recommendations. So it's really, again, very exciting, and it's applicable to every child.
And we had 25 teachers this summer volunteer to come in. They did some benchmark refreshing, and they are piloting our units of study right now throughout the district, which was very exciting. We offered it up to them, not knowing how many would take part in this summer work, but we did have 25 teachers in total do it, so it's a very exciting piece for us as well.
You know what I noticed? I read, except for last year, but the last few years, I read the scholarship for the high school and sometimes the middle school. So I get to see how these kids improve in their writing. So when I first started reading years ago, I'm like, you go and where? And you write like this? I was like, so now my son had to do his, and I'm like, it was very difficult. It's very difficult to write those college essays. They're very difficult. So now I have a great appreciation when I read them. Not only do I see that things are more articulated, they're digging deeper into their writing, which I'm enjoying. I always did enjoy to read the scholarships, but now they're becoming more creative with their use of words, and it's almost some of the kids are I mean, they're just very talented on their own, natural talents, and it's almost like reading a book and you can't wait, and you're like, what, just one page? I can't, so I love that piece.
They're attending to craft now, which is especially for that college essay piece, considering, you could have an essay that reads like a resume, or you can have an essay where you're looking at a student who's standing before you, presenting themselves to you.
And that's the piece that I like, because I get to know who this child is. I suppose it's a little bit more, some of it like very robotic, so you don't really get the sense of who the child is.
And that's the purpose of it.
Yeah, I love it, thank you.
Thank you. And just so we're aware, we are making efforts to articulate between our 8th grade teachers and 9th grade teachers. We provided opportunities last year for them to communicate with one another. One with a developer, with a literacy consultant, and one with me in the room. And they found those conversations to be incredibly helpful in terms of knowing what to expect from their now freshman students that have engaged in process writing, now certainly for their middle school careers. So we're working on continuing that articulation and noting our noticings. Right, so what are our kids coming prepared with now that they weren't before, and where can we continue to work to refine their skill set? So these are very exciting times, and when you look at it from the K-12 perspective, it's so incredibly powerful.
Thank you.
I've been watching this going on for many years.
Lee, put your microphone on.
What I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, and I have a 32-year-old, never got the benefit of what's going on today. My teachers were great. It was not taught the way you're teaching today. And I see we're going to see the results of this, and you're going to see Connetquot, the district, within maybe the next 5 years, just move up and have a reputation if this continues. I really believe that. I thank you.
Thank you. We talk constantly about our own teacher preparation programs. And in a room full of English teachers, the professional developer asked how many of you received courses in writing instruction. They're literacy based. It's almost a component that's expected. Maybe you have a talent or an affinity for it. But to actually learn how to teach writing is something that our post-secondary institutions are not necessarily engaging in. I think the first course I took was as a senior undergraduate, and it was in editing. So it's a gap, and certainly that translates over to students because we don't have the experience, that sort of technical experience in terms of how do I convey this through coursework. So we're getting it now.
I have a question, and I guess I was very strong in math and science. English, my writing was not so great. So I remember going to college and having to write math, all these papers, and I'm like, it took a while to adjust to the style that was required, and the citing and the paraphrasing and everything else like that. Is there a class now for the kids to take as sort of a prerequisite to college so that they have a good idea what is required on a college writing paper?
what we've done, a college writing style, you mean
Yes,
holistically.
yes, yes.
So we do engage in research at every grade level. We've moved it into the middle schools now as well, in terms of looking at what our libraries have to offer, not only physically in text form, because that's kind of going by the wayside, and we're looking at our virtual reference collection, the VRC, which the district invests quite a bit of money in order to maintain. Those are the most current source materials for research. The sources are scholarly sources, so it's not like students are conducting a Google search and reaping or gathering their information as credible information from this general search engine. So we're teaching students about, again, credible sources, how to select them, how to narrow a research topic. In every iteration of the research paper, no matter what the general concept of it, all of those steps are included. So it's this constant repetition, and what we found is that students need that practice with it. It's just like anything else. If you don't use it, if you're not writing that way all of the time, then it's a skill that's kind of put by the wayside. And kids coming back to it are like, oh, I kind of remember that, but I'm not really adept with it. So, we've redoubled our efforts, including some mini research projects as well, in order to kind of keep that blood flowing, if you will, and to develop that
So
skill
like
set.
inside, use footnotes and all that jazz. Beautiful, beautiful, because I know I've always found it difficult. I mean, I obviously got my niche, but it was a struggle just to get that piece of, would it paraphrase, I mean, I don't have to go through it with you, but it was a struggle for me to how to quote or cite so I'm glad that the kids are getting that exposure before they go into college and like, wait a minute, like me, like, oh, that's how you write a paper.
They certainly are. And, just so you're aware, that is incorporated within the Next Gen standards. It's there in the document. So the state has that expectation as well, which again is always sort of guiding us and kind of providing the pathway, the general pathway for us to follow. Next up, Dr. Mary Lawson.
Good evening. I'd like to talk about our science results. Our first slide shows our Regents results for this year. You can see our earth science percentage went up a bit, and I think that's a good sign, including the fact that this year we included a self-contained group of students that went through the earth science Regents exam. Our living environment scores went down just a bit. To give you an idea of the great job that State Ed did on making the living environment Regents, they were sending out error sheets before the exam was given. So definitely there were some issues there with wording of questions and things like that. So I don't think that this is a symbol of the fact that our students don't know the information, but more about the construction of the exam itself. Our chemistry results, I will say, I think they are the highest that I've ever seen in the 11 years I've been here. And as I mentioned to Mr. Middleman, one of the science directors in another school district called me to ask me how I was getting those kind of results. So I'm very proud of our teachers and our kids for doing that kind of job. And our physics results went up a bit. That 92 that you see in 2015 is a nice high blip, but it really reflects most of the time we've been in the 85 and above on our results for the physics Regents. And that is, I think, a good sign, considering that I think in New York State about 25% of the students actually make it through to take the physics Regents. So we are succeeding there. These are our mastery scores. As you can see, living environment and earth science are holding at 52%. We got a little bit of an increase in chemistry to 37% and a 10% increase in physics up to 45%. So I think we're having some good success there in getting our students involved in the physical sciences, which again is something that is a place we need to move, because we have far too few students graduating with taking physics and chemistry statewide. These are our AP results. You can see that our results in AP Biology went up a bit. Our enrollment in that course is also going up. This year we've got 3 sections, including our first section of 9th graders that are taking the course as a first-year course in a double period every day. Last year we did not have a high enough enrollment to offer AP Chem, but we do have 2 sections of it running this year.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was a good sign. Our scores have gone up considerably in AP Physics 1 as we've gotten more used to the kind of exam that they're running. You can see that there are different kinds of AP Physics. AP Physics 1 and 2 are algebra-based. We, as well as many districts on Long Island, have elected not to give AP Physics 2 any longer, but instead move our kids to AP Physics C, which is the calculus-based course, because for the students that are considering math, science, engineering careers, that's a far better experience for them. And there are 2 versions of the exam that the kids can take. AP Physics C with the M designation is mechanics, and AP Physics E and M, that's electricity and magnetism. So our kids have done, they have more of a foundation in the results in the E and M, which is why those scores are a little higher. To give you an example, I think it's 1,500 kids, less than 1,500 kids in the state took the M, but E and M was taken by, I think, 3,500 kids. So it's a small percentage of all the kids in the state that even attempt AP Physics C. But obviously something that we're looking at to try to get more of our kids to get higher scores. And even though that 1.92 looks low, it doesn't show that we had several kids earn 3s and 4s so that they got credit for all of that physics, which easily is 8 college credits worth of physics. So I think that's a good sign.
So this 2017 is the first year that...
Yes, that's correct. The first year that we had enough kids to run a section, and we're running a section this year.
So how did you find those kids? So if the kids were taking, because physics runs 11th and 12th grade, so how did they branch off? So from the 11th grade, they took the physics 1, and then they had the opportunity to go into the C.
The C,
right.
yes, the C. The kids have the option when they're taking the APC exam to take one part of it, both parts of it. They can take the E and the M, or the E, or both. So we encourage them to take both because they really have nothing to lose if they're going to take the exam. You might as well take them both and hope that you have learned enough to earn credit. But I don't want to see anybody not take it and then find out that they really could have done it. In terms of what has happened here, New York State had last December 12th adopted what they call the New York State P12 Science Learning Standards, which really is an adaptation of the next generation science standards. Notice that the state kind of adopted our national logo there in our name when they changed the name of the math and the ELA. But we have really been working on this for quite a while. I probably should be embarrassed to say that we stalked the people at Achieve to find out when they were releasing those standards, and we were there on the day it happened and have been kind of working on it since then. In the summer of 2016, we created a unit in each of the science disciplines in 9 through 12, so earth science, chem, physics, and living environment. And then we taught that last year and had the opportunity to review it and revise it. We've had professional development that I've provided, as well as that we've gotten through BOCES and other sources on the instructional shift that's involved in these standards, which is called 3-dimensional learning, that we'll talk about in a couple minutes. And then this year, the official implementation of the standards began on July 1st. The state does not expect that every school is 100% aligned now. They expect this to be a slow, thoughtful rollout, that you are doing some every year and increasing your understanding of the standards and your implementation. So they understand that at this point, nobody is 100% aligned, nor is any resource out there 100% aligned, which is something that you have to be very careful about. This summer, we wrote our second unit that's aligned to the standards, second one in 9 through 12, first one in 6 through 8. And I can see already that the teachers are using it and then deciding, oh yes, this worked, this didn't, and revising it along those lines. We continue to engage in professional development. I had 5 teachers with me yesterday at a professional development conference. And of course, we always look at our data that comes out every year so that we know where our areas of strength and weakness lie, so that we can attempt to improve those in the year ahead.
So I can't thank Mary enough for her leadership, not only for our district, but Long Island and for the state. Mary is an active speaker. She's wanted all over the state to come in and talk about the next gen standards. We are far ahead of where local districts are and where state districts are as far as the implementation, as far as the shift in our instructional practices within the classroom, which is probably the most important thing.
Thank you, Mary.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we just want to talk quickly about some of the changes and just highlight where we are. We're going to try to condense it a little bit for time purposes.
Can I ask you one quick question before we go to that, regarding the AP Chem? You mentioned there were 2 sections. Do you know how many current students that is in the 2 sections?
Right now, I know we started with, I want to say about 48.
Wow.
And it might be, it's probably down into the high 30s right now.
Okay, that's great, because I know we had the controversy here before, we only had about 4 or 5 kids. Do you know off the top of your head if those kids were, I mean, I'm sure they had the opportunity to take it this year because they're enrolled in that?
I think, it's almost one of those things where not having it built up the excitement to get it, and
It seems that way,
it may be
That's
almost
great.
one of those things where we have to consider
Every other
offering
year.
it every
Yeah,
other
so we
year.
talked about it. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
great, that's good enough, that's really, thank you.
Absolutely. So I wanted to just give everybody a little bit of an idea of what these standards are and what the changes are. The biggest thing that we need to understand is that these changes are really not about changing content. They're about the pedagogical shift that has to happen in instruction. For the most part, there'll be a bit of a realignment in grades K to 5. In our current standards, the state let districts decide where they wanted to teach each area. The new standards make it very clear what has to be taught at each grade level, K to 5. But in most grade levels, they've reduced the amount of content because they want the kids to have more experience working with the science. So you're going to see a lot less memorization, less flashcards, things like that. A lot less just disjointed ideas rather than talking about phenomenon the kids experience in their everyday life, and a lot less teacher-directed whole class instruction. So the students will be learning terminology and context. They'll be doing a lot of modeling, which doesn't mean you go into the shop and build something. It really means making diagrams to show your thinking and then revising those models as the instruction goes on, which demonstrates how your thinking has changed. And we really want students to be able to ask their own questions, design their own investigations, and understand what's really happening in an experiment and what the results mean. That's really our goal.
Is there professional development for teachers in that area also?
Yes, absolutely. Because this is not an easy thing, and I don't want to make it sound like it is. It's something that's difficult to do and takes practice, and that's why we've started early, because we want our teachers to be able to do this and try it out and find the kinks, because they're going to be there.
So that's one of the things that we've focused on over the past number of years is not only outside professional development, but also our internal professional development run by our district directors and chairpeople.
And this talks a little bit more about the changes. One of the things that, even looking at some of the other states' exam questions, it becomes clear that a lot of questions don't have one right answer. We're used to that, the multiple choice, it's A or it's B, or you're getting it wrong. And these questions are going to have more than one right answer, but the main goal is, can you support your answer with evidence and give an explanation? Students are not just going to read a textbook and find the question in the back. It's going to be synthesizing other sources to look for information, and a lot less labs where there's a set of directions and this is what you do to kind of prove that what your teacher told you is true. It's going to be about understanding and doing the activity first before you explore the content, so it makes a lot more sense along the way. And mainly to understand, these standards are for everyone. They're for special education students, ENL students, every student up and through AP. Everybody should be exposed to these science standards, because most of the time when kids are doing science, they're having an awful lot of fun. And then this is the main thing, the instructional shift to student-directed, three-dimensional learning based around what are called the science and engineering practices that I'll show in a moment, and looking at phenomena. Even things, for example, there's a nice experiment where if you take a balloon and you squirt orange ring at the balloon, it will pop. So and the kids see that, and then hopefully they're going to ask, why does that happen? And try to conduct an experiment to figure that out. Have them explain the phenomenon.
You gotta do it.
Yeah.
You got it.
Oh, come on, I can't cheat.
No,
There's like 80 more slides.
We'll bring it in the next meeting.
Someone will do it for you.
Yeah,
There you
sounds
go.
good.
That'll be our student comment report.
There you go. Whoops. Oh, there you go. This is just a quick example of what the standards look like. The standards are called performance expectations because they're written about what the student should be able to do. And the foundation boxes, which are those blue, green, and orange colors that we all see through the next generation science standards, are about the science and engineering practices, disciplinary core ideas, and cross-cutting concepts. And we want to connect them, and those boxes show where the math and the ELA are connected to the science, because we want to create interdisciplinary units. Because one of the studies done by the Smithsonian showed that you can improve ELA and math scores by teaching science well. But you can't do it the other way. You can't learn science by reading about it, how to do it. These are the science and engineering practices that we want the instruction to revolve around. Asking questions, as I mentioned before, modeling, carrying out your own experiment, and so forth. Really diving into an experiment, looking at the data, creating your own argument to explain what's happening. And of course, communicating that, really understanding how to explain to somebody else what it is that you did. And these are the cross-cutting concepts. What I like about these is that they're very interdisciplinary. You can see patterns in almost every content area. So we're teaching students the same skills in a variety of content areas, which should make them even stronger in those skills. And you see cause and effect and so forth. The disciplinary core ideas are the content. And what's quite nice, although our state website hasn't gotten there yet, if you look at these on the NGSS website, they're all hyperlinked to explain exactly what the content means. So you understand not only what you're supposed to be teaching as a teacher, but what the kids should come to you knowing and what they're going to learn at the next grade, so you know how far to go. So if you're teaching a second grade class on heredity, you don't need to teach it at the AP level. You know exactly how much information you need to deliver and what's age appropriate. And what you see here is the transition. We are really kind of between stages 2 and stages 3. The first is just knowing that this is happening, that these standards are changing. And surprisingly, there are a lot of schools in New York State that really aren't quite even in this part yet. Stage 2 is understanding the standards to a greater degree and starting to plan your instruction about it. And the more you plan your instruction and the more you know, the more you're going to realize, I don't know, I have to go back. And then finally, we expect 3 or 4 years down the road that there will be full alignment to the new standards. And then this is kind of the buzzwords now in science, the claim, evidence, reasoning. So a student makes a claim about what they know based on the experiment that they did. They show the evidence from their data and then explain it through their reasoning. So that's what you can see.
So, that previous slide really indicates, most districts on Long Island are still at phase one, where, I think due to Mary's leadership, we've moved into phase two and now are really starting to break into phase three, which is putting us definitely ahead of the game with regards to our science instruction K through 12. So, thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you.
You mentioned about the clear path that it looks like in the K through 5. Are you seeing the same clear path in the shifts in middle school, or is it not as, is it much more clearer?
The shifts are clear, yes,
Yeah.
the shifts. What isn't clear, and no matter how hard we tried, and believe me, we tried, to get the state to do this, and they had a lot of feedback that asked them to do it, they would not tell us exactly what you had to teach in 6, 7, and 8. They wanted that local control piece, which I don't think was a good idea personally. And my colleague Joyce Barry from Plainview and I tried to get an island-wide group going last year to kind of make a Long Island sequence, but we basically came up with 3 options because people are very tied to, I'm going to do it my way. The other piece that does come into play here, and another one of my pet projects, is looking at how science certification is impacted here. Because unlike math, which is a 7-12 certification, science teachers are certified by discipline, and that can create some issues in terms of staffing the courses properly with the faculty that are available. But we're not giving up on trying to solve this problem.
We're experiencing the same thing, and it's
Yeah.
So one of the projects that we have moving forward is a realignment of the middle school. Why don't you just share that quickly?
Sure. What we're going to be doing is changing a little bit about what we do in the middle school. We're going to be moving to a physical science curriculum in 6th grade, life science in 7th grade, which is what we do already, and then earth science in 8th grade, which will parallel the Regents course, so that should we have students that need to change courses, they're not moving into something that's completely different. So I think that will make more sense, and that's the move we're going to be moving toward starting next year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
So Mrs. Rona has only been with us for about 5 minutes, so we're throwing her right into the fire with.
It's okay.
Where's the clip?
I have my clip.
All right.
Good evening, I'm Margaret Romer, the Director of Business and Social Studies. And I'm here tonight to talk to you about all of the changes that we've seen in social studies over the last few years. Social studies has been the leader as far as the state is concerned in making revisions to curriculum. About 3 years ago, the state in 2014 in April decided to change the social studies standards, and we now call them the social studies framework. And the reason that they chose social studies is that they felt that this was an area that was not necessarily addressed as clearly as some of the other disciplines in the Common Core standards. What was interesting, though, was they actually sought the input of teachers. So for the first time, the state actually asked teachers to come up and review curriculum and provide input into what the curriculum should be K-12 across the state. And it's been a massive change. It's a paradigm shift in the way that we teach. And I'm thankful to all of my colleagues and to Mr. Middleman for explaining a lot of the shifts, because they are very similar in social studies as they are in ELA and science and math. We're really asking students to analyze, synthesize, and to also use data to make informed decisions. So we're really trying to help them move into 21st century skills. But I do want to go over the results for the department. We have the results for the global studies and the U.S. history regions. You can see that the U.S. history regions has maintained a very high level of achievement. They have over 97% of students passing. Global studies had 90% last year. The global studies is the test that is going to be the first revision for the Regents exams in social studies, and we are now coming up on a transition Regents for this June, which will be a different half of the content that they've assessed in the past. Usually, we were one of the only Regents that they actually assessed 2 full years of curriculum, 9th and 10th grade, on global studies, and now for the first time we're just going to have 1 year of curriculum, which will be 10th grade. These are the mastery rates for the social studies regents. Again, U.S. history had 77% and continued to remain steady. And global history went from 52 to 59% over the last 3 years. I think in large part we have such a high percentage of mastery rate because the district was fortunate to work with S.G. Grant. He was the former dean of the education department at Binghamton University, and he actually was the leader for the state of over 90 educators who wrote the K-12 curriculum, and he also worked with 2 of his colleagues in the country, one from Kentucky and one from South Carolina, and they wrote the C3 standards, which is the inquiry design-based model, which we're using for part of our assessments, which I'll finish one at a time. These are AP results, and as a department, we have the most AP exams presently going on in the high school, and our department has also seen a huge shift due to Mr. Costa's Futuring project. We've had a huge increase in students being involved in the AP. We've also had several revisions of our AP curriculum. The next curriculum is going to be revised will be the AP Government, which is coming up in June of 2018. We're going to start the revision on that. So, the staff, we've been really happy to see that students are willing to take this challenge. It's a big challenge as a 10th grader or 11th grader, even a 12th grader, to take the first college course, and we've been really proud that they've been involved. We certainly have some work to do, and we realize that. We've already started a plan to initiate several different things to help students meet with more mastery on these exams, and it's working with both the staff and the students to accomplish that. Some of the things that were done last year, they worked with, as the social studies information has been coming out, the state has been giving it up to us in segments. As I said, in 2014, they rolled out the framework. In 2016, they set up the Regents exam and the timeline for that. We just got, in September, the actual performance standards for the global region. So each year, we're going to continue to do professional development as more information is coming to us from the state. This year, we're working, we actually have a bunch of curriculum writing over the summer. The 4th and 5th grade implemented new textbooks for social studies. The Putnam Westchester BOCES added the 7th and 8th grade social studies curriculum, so our staff worked with that. We had 6th grade teachers and 8th grade teachers come together during the summer to write inquiries and to write short constructive response questions for the rest of the staff. And we will continue to do additional summer curriculum writing in the future to address the continuing state standard changes.
Thank you so much. Be quiet, Laura.
So it's, I just would like to thank the board for their continued support for the curriculum projects that we do over the summer, as well as the professional development that we're able to bring in and provide for our staff. We're seeing some really significant changes and shifts in student learning, in teaching in the classroom, and most importantly, success for our students. So I just want to thank the board for their continued support.
Thank you and your staff, Dean.
I only have 8 more presentations.
Oh my God, please, guys.
We have next transcript review committee.
Seriously?
All right, so as you remember, earlier in the school year, I think actually last year, time is flying, Mr. Costa put together a transcript review committee to look at our high school transcripts and the impact of some of the practices that we had at the high school. They did come up with some changes. There were questions from the board with regards to the do no harm policy or practice. Mr. Costa did reconvene the committee, and I'll let him share the results of that work.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Costa.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. As everyone can see, I have a copy of the presentation this evening. This is a much truncated version of what you saw in August. In the August presentation, we discussed many different things. And, as went through the findings and results of the Transcript Review Committee in August, we made several recommendations. One of the recommendations we made was to look at the differences in how we actually calculated the region scores and the weighting by quarter and by their final average. We gave you 4 examples for 4 different students, student A, B, C, D, and D. And we calculated the percentages in various ways to find out what was the best way to calculate our student percentage. Terry McNamee did a wonderful study for us in the transfer review committee last year. Terry's not here tonight, but she literally looked at, just as a recap, 12,000 results, 12,000 student results on exams, which was a tremendous amount of work on her part, and I thank her. And what we discovered from her research was that the correlation between the student's overall average and without the Regents score and with the Regents score was a 0.4 difference. Now it went from a -9 to a +5 in the deviation of results, but it was a 0.4 average. That kind of indicates that how we're teaching to the moment, our students are doing well, and the scores, there's a correlation between the actual score, course average, and what the students earn on their Regents score. If we took the current practice right now, which is that each quarter is worth 20% of the student's final grade, the Regents score is 20%. That counts almost like a 5th quarter, which is a 20% portion of the overall average. For the second quarter, our midterms counted as 20% of the second quarter. I know it sounds a little confusing. I'm trying to articulate the best I can just as a review for those who were not here last time. Our midterms in the second quarter count as 20% of the second quarter grade. The Regents score currently is 20% as a 5th quarter grade, calculated all together. Student A, in the example, if we use the current calculations, ends up with an 87% overall average. That's just a recap. Student B, if we remove the midterm from the second quarter grade and take that 20% out, it counts as 5% on the back end. And the Regents score counts as 15% on the back end, making up the last 20%. That would give our students with the same grade points at 89%. Student C, same content, 10 to 10 on the back end. And student D, you just try something different, counted as 190. As you can see in the results here from the various students, student B scenario is the most beneficial to our students in the last presentation. We were asked as a committee to reconvene and discuss the do no harm policy in the committee. Some of the highlights from our discussions of do no harm: we surveyed several school districts that currently have the policy and are currently practicing the policy. It seemed that overall consensus from these school districts was that it was up to the teacher to determine whether or not they're going to count their Regents score as part of the grade or not. And the way it worked is if your overall course average without your Regents score, okay, was less than your Regents grade, then the Regents grade would count as part of your final average. If your overall quarterly average score was greater than your Regents score, then they did not count the Regents score, and that therefore was a do no harm policy. And that's how some of these school districts were handling do no harm. It wasn't just a blank, we're not going to use it in the districts that we spoke to, but there was a method to the do no harm policy.
I thought that was explained at the last meeting, that, I'll give you the geometry, for example. If you have a 95 in the class, you score an 85 on the geometry test. Well, then the Regents, then the geometry Regents wouldn't be, we'll use an example, wouldn't be calculated into that child's final average.
And they've been mentioned, but we didn't know for sure because it was a part of the discussion. And as a committee, we didn't do any of that research. That wasn't part of our discussion, nor was it part of our research. After looking at these various schools, that's what we determined that that's exactly how to do it. As far as the geometry reading is concerned, that's above the high school. That's a decision for you folks. If you feel that the test or a test like that is unfair, or there were too many things that were wrong with it, as a Board of Education, as a district administration, I believe, you can make that determination. That's not the building's determination.
I wasn't aware of that, Linda.
There are very, very, very few school districts changed and did not use the geometry. Dean, do you have that number on how many actually voted to not use the Regents?
I don't have that with me, but I can get that for you.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that we had that option. I mean, this is,
We
you know,
technically,
Well, I may have misspoken, so I apologize if I have. It's just my understanding. I
the
don't want to put anybody,
the reason why I'm
you know.
saying that is because kids get very competitive. Some, all, whatever, get competitive. And when it comes down, when they look at their school rankings, and you know the top 20, 25, 30%, it could be just that 1% off. And something like this could have taken that child, it could have just altered that whole ranking process, so.
right, so we do, you know, I think there were, to my recollection, a total of 3 districts that did elect to not count the geometry regions, but we'll get that hard data for you. One of the challenges that we do have that, based upon our current APBR plan that is submitted to the state, our teacher evaluation is based upon our overall region's performance.
You have to elaborate on that one.
So our teachers get a local score, and they also get a growth score from the state. Our local score is based upon the Regents exams. So we need to count each of the Regents in that calculation in order to get the, to be in compliance with the APPR requirements.
All right, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but didn't the geometry regions not only hurt children and teachers?
It's, so the geometry regions from a local perspective is, when we look at the region score, it's a series of region scores. So it's not just a score.
So then basically the geometry regions only hurt geometry kids.
Correct.
Wow.
Well, it did hurt, you know, it did impact the geometry teachers because that was their state growth score was based upon their performance of their students. So it did impact the geometry math teachers at the high school.
Well, that's what I was asking. So it hurt kids and hurt teachers.
Yes, but not
Not an
all
overall.
of the
Not
teachers,
an
yeah.
overall.
I'm sorry.
But it's already been taken, so if a Board of Education chose to exercise the option Mr. Costa was referencing, the student impact could be addressed, but it would still be calculated as the APPR score because the scores already exist.
Correct.
I wish I would have known I had the option to overturn this and not allow it to be counted in those children's scores. I could tell you some of those children have taken that test, walked in, and very confident, practiced, did what they had to do, walked out of there feeling a little bit defeated, get the scores, even feel more defeated, and then we're going to hold it against them on a flawed test. I don't even know why we even counted that test. And I know there's other flawed test, but that one just seems to really stick out for me because having later on doing a correction of adding on 2 points here and 2 points there, and then having a Long Island student find out that one of the questions are wrong, and then we're expecting our students, 10th grade, 9th and 10th graders, 10th and 11th graders. No, 9th and 10th, that was correct the first time. Yeah, it's very unfortunate.
I met with my geometry teacher several times, and I'm heading a committee to address exactly what Ken has addressed already. While they thought that test was challenging, they didn't think that test was unfair. There were kids who might have only got 100 on that test.
Really?
There were several kids who got 95s, 96s on that test. So to declare a test completely flawed and unfair, you would have to see like the majority of kids getting 15 points lower than their 4-quarter averages on that exam. So while it might have been a difficult test, and you gotta remember we talked about this before when Louise was presenting, they're coming from algebra, where the curve on that test is drastic. So they come in overconfident because of what they're getting on the algebra thing, and then they get, for lack of a better term, smacked in the face a little bit by the geometry exam. So my teachers thought it was a challenging test, but not an unfair test.
So I wonder how many of our students, I know none of our students received 100 on that region. What was the highest score they did receive?
I don't have that data.
Do you know it, Dean, what the highest score was? So, Rob, how many of your students received 100 on that? Do you know offhand?
A handful.
Wow, so that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
That's pretty high.
Thank you, Dawn.
So, the final recommendations from the transcript committee after we had our discussions. There are things that I 2017, as a board, as a division, we decided we would move forward from last time. We decided that we're going to recalculate the course average for those students who pass the Regents exam in August. We've decided that creating principals appeal process for extenuating circumstances for performance on the June Regents. We would like to implement display only the highest Regents grade on the transcripts. Separate out midterm test grade from the second quarter average. And then each quarter is worth 20%, with the midterm worth 5%, and the Regents slash final 15 as the last 1/5 percentage is calculated in.
So basically, everything is gonna stay the same what we have now?
No.
No, they're changing
These are all
Changing
changes.
the last line,
No,
basically.
these are all
No,
changes.
these are all changes. Originally, we would not recalculate. The current practice that we have right now, if you fail the Regents exam and you retake it in August, if you fail in June and retake it in August, it doesn't recalculate. So we want to change it, that if you fail in June and you pass in August, we recalculate it to your final average. We also want to change that if you fail the Regents exam in June and it's extenuating circumstances, for example, I'll use an example. You're an AP student, you get 90s and above on all your exams. AP exams are 4s and 5s. Regents exams are high 90s. Now, if something happens on that day, whatever, you get a 70 on the exam. Completely out of the norm for you. You would appeal to the principal, and the principal has your time to say, yes, you can take it again in August, and I will recalculate it. That's an extenuating circumstance. That does not exist. So if we can do that now, we're moving forward, we would like to implement that.
So these are all practices that were currently in place, previously to Mr. Costa and Ms. Adams and myself, Dr. Adams and myself coming in. These were things that had come up through parent discussions, teacher comments, administrative feedback, and each of the bullets there lists a change in practice for us that we think in the long term benefits our students.
The third bullet would say display the highest Regents grade on the transcript. Currently we display all grades. So we just want to take the highest grade. So for example, if a student does fail and gets a 16 on the exam, and take it again in August, they get a 75, only the 75 will be on that transcript.
So let me ask you something. So you have a kid, again, a 90s kid or an 80s kid. Oh, we'll do an 80s kid. So you got an 80s kid. He scores high 60, low 70. But he passed. Kid passed. But he wants to improve his score. So if he got a 72 on the Regents, which is technically passing, he wants to improve his score. Is he allowed to do that?
We as a committee agree. We had that discussion that come up, and it came up last time. I know it's my understanding that the agreement was the student wanted to challenge that score, and they wanted to say they want to do better on the exam. It would show on the transcript, but it would not recalculate.
I don't agree with that either. If the kid's willing to go take a summer and take a course and redo this, why wouldn't we give him the benefit of a recalc?
These are recommendations.
Yeah, I don't know.
The recommendation discussion of the committee was that they felt that the students have an equal opportunity in a 4-course earn a grade. If a student chooses to study more and do more, it's going above and beyond the regular student, which is understood. However, they're still having an unfair advantage to get a leg up over someone else in their grade.
Why
So
open
really,
up the opportunity for everybody else? Not many are going to take that. If they've got a passing grade, many won't retake it, but you'll have some kids that...
Again, these are recommendations that came out of the committee. If the board so chooses to make any other suggestions or changes, we have that we can have that discussion and make those changes moving forward.
Any question? I got a question. Can you refresh my memory on the discussion we had last time surrounding, because I'm a little fuzzy, but I remember a discussion about the midterm and the teachers, or your teachers feeling that that was a more difficult test than actually, and that was causing the grades in the second quarter to be, my concern is, and here's where I'm going with, my concern is if you change to the one suggestion you made without adjusting, or if then you do adjust, your data that you based it on is going to change if you adjust those midterms. So what I'm saying, you're choosing to make the midterm part of that 20%, but yet we talked about the midterm being a difficulty and the possibility of looking at those midterms and changing them one way or another. and now we're choosing the option that, yes, gives them the highest score, but is it going to give them the highest score when we look at the midterms and change that? That's my concern.
The discussion was never to change the midterm. The midterms are the midterms. And historically, students tend to do not as well in the midterms as they do for the quarter. You know, it is the local exam is more difficult than the Regents exam for the students. It's a more challenging test. And historically, our students in the midterms do less. They don't do as well in the midterms as they do in the actual second quarter or first quarter. Therefore, lowering that second quarter grade. By removing the midterm, not changing the test. You know,
I understand what you're doing. I guess my concern is...
The percentage, the weight of that is different.
My concern is we're here and we're concerned about the Regents and how it's impacting the child and the child's grade, but you're telling me that the midterm is traditionally more difficult. So why aren't we having that discussion? How that's impacting the child and the difficulty that they're having. So that's where I'm at.
And that's a very good question. I can answer that by everything that the directors have been working on, and we're working on this building. Because the test is the test. Not necessarily the midterm, the Regents exams. Some say it's fair, some say it's challenging, some say it's unfair, some say it's impossible. You know, one of the things that we're looking at as a building, and I can just speak for high school right now, but I've seen, and you all heard what the director is doing district-wide. There's a radical shift in how our students learn. That is a radical shift in what they're doing for the 21st century, as opposed to what all of us in this room did when we were growing up. You know, and that shift is definitely happening, and it's happening at an exponential rate. You know, the way the students learn may be far more superior than what these tests even are. And maybe the tests are outdated, whether it's our midterms, our local finals, the Regents exams. It's definitely a possibility. All of the new standards, the next generation standards, the C3 standards, they're challenging students in a completely different way. 100% different than what any one of us in the room did. You know, so maybe the test is flawed. Maybe it's not a fair test. But is it really the exam that's flawed, or is it all practice? That's something that we're looking at as a staff tomorrow in our faculty meeting. Some of the practices that we do in our instructional methodology. If maybe we change our method of instruction to address the needs of our current students, these guys, you know, maybe those tests won't be as difficult as they are. Whether it be a Regents exam, an AP exam, or even a local final or midterm. So to say that the tests are flawed right off the bat, I don't know if that's 100% accurate. No, I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that I don't know if that's 100% accurate. I really don't. So some of the tests are unfair or harder than others, sure. But maybe it's us. Maybe what we're doing is the issue. I mean, we can argue the transcript until we're blue in the face. You know, either way, our students have to perform, whatever it is. And if we're going to challenge our students to be better students, better community members, civic-minded, you know, and be able to handle themselves outside of our four walls, that's what we're going to do. So when we look at the test, we look at the transcript, we look at all the things we're talking about, maybe it comes down to method of instruction. You know, we had a speaker come in to talk to my faculty on day 2 of the superintendent's conference today, Bill Brennan. He mentioned something about technology. Every single person in this room, with the exception of Nico, had to learn technology. This kid was born with technology in his hand. We all had to learn it. I was in college when the internet, the first World Wide Web came out. I was amazed. You know, he was probably doing it when he was in his crib. My grandson was over this weekend. Yes, I have a grandson. Dan was over this weekend. Oh, sorry, Dan. I see you over there. You know,
He just let you.
the kid's 1.5 years old. He takes my daughter's tablet, doesn't even speak. He looks at it, points at it, takes it, turns it the way, orientates it the way it's supposed to be, goes underneath, turns it on, flip, and goes to the video he wants to watch. He's 1.5 years old. I think as educators, you know, maybe it's not the test, maybe it's not the transcript, but it's how we're teaching our students to handle those exams, handle the things that the pressures they have to have, and really open their eyes to something different. So I think that maybe our students are learning at a different rate than these exams are evolving, and that could be part of the issue. You know, so whether we weight the Regents exam at 10, 5, 15, 20, you know, I'm not going to say it's not going to matter, because it does, but maybe it's not the test. Maybe the percentage doesn't matter. Maybe it's how we teach. And that's something that we're going to explore as a faculty tomorrow at our meeting. So, I don't have an answer, a definitive answer, on what's the best practice. I can tell you what the recommendations of the committee are after our discussions. And these are the recommendations that came from the committee. The committee felt, you know, and it wasn't unanimous, but the committee did feel,
You
you
said it
know,
wasn't
the
unanimous?
majority, sorry?
You said it wasn't unanimous, what was it, 50-50, 40-50, I mean,
6-3.
60-40? Huh?
6-3.
6-3 in favor of this?
6-3 in favor of this. So it was a majority decision on what we felt was going to be the best practice for our students at Connetquot High School, and to go with the scenario of student B, which is each quarter is worth 20%. The midterm and final exam is 5 and 15 on the back end.
Can I ask you a question? You mentioned that, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around, and obviously I'm looking at B and D, but I'm just trying to wrap my head around. You mentioned Terry McNamee looking at 1,200 students.
12,000.
12,000, sorry. When you did student A, B, and D, was there a sample size that was done on? Was that done on
No.
10 students, 1 student, 100 students, 500 students?
Each one of these samples, one student, same exact grades, different weighting at different positions. So all the grades for all 4 samples for student A through D, they all have the same exact grades.
Different process.
Yes, different process. So out of this process, most beneficial was 89, which was student B. And if I recall last time, the last committee, I thought the majority of the board, you know, with the exception of investigating do no harm, the consensus was, yes, that sounded like the most plausible way to go. So these are the recommendations that came from the transfer review committee.
Thanks. Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Costa.
Thank you. When do we have to decide on this?
We'd like to have the answer relatively quickly. We have to do some recalculations with regards to our student management system in order to make sure that the weighting is correctly incorporated for you.
All right, so I think it's something the board will have to consider, to look at.
I just want to make sure that I'm clear, because I'm pretty sure I'm clear, but maybe so everybody else is clear as well. So in A, B, and C, we are still using the 4 quarters, and there's a 20% piece that is made up either of the full final grade, the Regents. In the second one, it's in partial midterm, partial Regents. In the third one, it's partial midterm, partial Regents. But in D, because you calculate it at 1/9, it actually turns out that those 2 pieces using together become 11% of the grade, rather than 20%. Is that correct? Am I correct in my math?
The 5 and the 10, or the 5 and the 15 comprise that last percentage together.
Correct. They could become the 20%. But you're only calculating it as one, and you're doubling the other 2 grades.
Correct.
So it's 1/9, and 1/9 is 11%.
Yes.
So it's actually 11% rather than, so the first 3 are still a 20% piece that is being held, gets counted. Well, this 4th one is actually a reduction in the percentage that's counted.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. What?
I'm following you, how is it, and wouldn't that be higher? I don't know, I'm trying to get more.
These, the first 3, you have the 4 quarters,
Right.
which is 80%. And then the Regents and the midterm make up the final 20% in some form. Well, actually, in A, it's still in the other grade, but they're 20%. Then in this one, what you're doing is you're taking the 4 quarters, you double them, right? So you count them twice. And whatever you decide to make up, whether it's going to be 5 and 10 or 10 and 10, become the last 20%, but you don't double that. So there's 9 total grades. When you divide that by 9, each one of those becomes 11%. So you've actually reduced the percentage that the Regents and the midterm are counting to 11% from 20%.
How come you didn't provide a no harm statistic here?
That's from that one right there, and from that slide, with the 4 students.
Yeah, none of this reflects a no harm
That's
calculation.
a recap from the last presentation. The do no harm is if your grade point average is above, excuse me, if the regional exam is above your grade point average, is calculated. If it's below, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but you would want to see that as a calculation, as an option. It's like you kind of like,
We could do that, we'll send it to you.
you follow what I'm saying, right, Dean? Is
No, I mean, we could, we wanted to recap where we left off.
just use a situation where we do now, what we presently have now. So you have a 95 student, they get an 85 on the test.
They stay in
What's our
95.
present
They're
thing look
95.
like? And then you reflect it on a no harm policy, and then how does it look? And it even use these calculations.
Yeah, and you know, again, we're all in this for kids. We all, you know, our goal is to make sure that we're providing the best education for students, and that we're not putting these external constraints on them that do any, you know, damage to their academic progress or opportunities in the future. Assessments are important,
Yes, of course.
and you know, knowing where students are mid-year provide us valuable information in instruction as far as where we need to remediate or where we need to extend. And assessment at the end, that culminating piece, is important to understand where we got to for that student, so that they are ready for that next course or that next grade level.
We still have a responsibility to provide them what reality is. And life isn't, if you don't do well on it, it doesn't count. It just doesn't work that way. So they need to have a little skin in the game too.
Oh, no, of course, of course.
Well, a no harm policy is if you didn't do well on it, then it doesn't count.
Yeah, but I
that's
don't
not
think
how it
that's
works.
gonna change the mind frame of these kids. They're gonna still go
Sure it will.
into.
No
You
doubt
think
about
so?
it.
There's
Absolutely.
is there evidence to support that?
A converse analogy would be, tell the kids homework won't count. They gonna do it?
That's why I like D, because it reduces the percentage.
What's that?
I said that's why I particularly like D, because it reduces the percentage, but it doesn't still hold it account.
One of the recommendations my committee suggested was, if there is an exam that there's data that is evidence that the exam was flawed, then you consider not counting that exam. But there'd have to be overwhelming data to suggest that that exam was extremely flawed. Not just locally in your building, all over. You know?
Well, Dean, can you supply us that information, what the kids' course grades are, how they scored on the Regents?
For geometry.
Yes, please.
I guess just to reiterate, because Craig asked, why am I looking at that one? The numbers come out higher for B, and the reason is, Craig, is my concern, which what I expressed to Mr. Costafor, and he, gave a great explanation of how we need to look at the way we're teaching, whether or not the exams are up to what we're teaching, how we're teaching the kids. When we start to change some of those things and address some of those situations, my concern is that if you go with B, that those numbers may be flawed as you change them. Whereas I think in D you have more of a steady thing because you've lessened the impact of it. That's the only reason why I would like D. Because my concern is as we move forward and trying to address some of those things and how we're doing that, those numbers may change because you're using data that statistically was more difficult when you're using it. That was why I had the concern.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, synergistic,
Thank you.
energy savings.
Hello, everybody. So anybody who's been coming to the board meetings for the past 2.5, 3 years knows that I do everything I can to be as frugal as I possibly can within the codes. We have not raised anything within the budget, although we've shuffled things in order to be as efficient and as practical as possible. I am constantly looking for ways to save the district money. While I'd like to be able to take credit for this initiative, I actually began as a skeptic. A year ago, I was invited into a meeting with Dr. Adams and a few gentlemen from Synergist. They were on the island. They were presenting their project in other districts as well. 2 other districts in particular that they've been in and have signed agreements with are William Floyd and Bay Shore. Districts that I know people very well in both of them. Bay Shore, I know the facility director extremely well, as it's my home district, and in William Floyd, I know the business official as I went to school with him 10 years ago. And before that, I had about a 25-year history with him from my old neighborhood. After hearing their side of it, looking at what they could offer, what they could present, we felt that it would be foolish not to explore it any further. As such, we created an RFP. That RFP looked for companies that could help us do energy management throughout the district, using their expertise, bringing it to the community, bringing it to the district in a way that we can actually reduce our utilization of our utilities, which is the second largest part of our budget district-wide for plants and facilities. The successful candidate throughout that review process was Synergistic, the company that we met with over a year ago. They have two representatives here tonight. They'd like to present their proposal to the district. And if you don't have any problems or any questions with it, you're actually going to see later on in your agenda an approval of their contract. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Patrick Bannon and Mr. Lynn Pace.
Thanks very much. Actually, I've got a presentation if you like, I can hand it out. Okay. Oh, thanks.
And you should be talking to
Are you showing this on the screen?
Well, thanks very much for having me here tonight. My name is Pat Bannon. I'm with the company Synergistic. We're out of Dallas, Texas, and with me tonight is Lynn Pace. Lynn is out of Dallas. I'm out of Fairfax, Virginia. Unfortunately, tonight it was supposed to be Mike Vitar who was going to be with you. He's ill, so I'm here backing him up. And if I falter, then Lynn will step up to the mic. Okay, so I'm going to save a little bit of time and go over this pretty quickly, give you an overview of what it is that Synergistic does. We are the energy conservation company. What that means, oops, there we go. Forward.
Try the next slide.
How's that?
Before you were looking for?
Yeah? Okay, so I guess it's a little out of order, but so I'll just go with the way it's up on the screen, if that's okay. It's probably one slide out of order in what you have there. Synergistic, well, let me go ahead and go back to that, so I'll introduce who we are. The company is only about energy conservation. You may be familiar with energy efficiency. What that means is retrofitting equipment to more efficient equipment to save money. That requires money up front to do that. What we offer is purely conservation. We've been doing it for over 30 years. We have over 1,400 clients, billions in savings with these clients. On average, we turn the energy spend dial back about 26%. So pretty substantial. When you consider all the other ways that you can save money in your energy spend, this by far dwarfs any other way to save money in energy. And there's no upfront cost. The last one of the aspects of our program that's really important is Energy Star. We're an Energy Star Partner of the Year. We have been for the last 9 years. And the reason why is because we've been in 23,000 school buildings across this country. Of that total, 8,000 have earned Energy Star certification. That's a great message to your community. It says this building is in the top 25%. That's part of our program. It's a tangible benefit of the program. And let me just say, of this 8,000 that we have certified, that is fully 50% of all school buildings that have been Energy Star certified since the beginning of that program. So it's a really good indicator of the value of the program from proof of the savings as well as communicating to the community. I'm going to set this upside down. There we go. I'm left-handed. Just to give you a little bit of background, the energy pyramid. This is sort of the food pyramid for energy savings. It's created by Dr. Buffington out of Penn State University. And what he says, and what the industry has adapted to, is that there are 4 ways to save money in your energy spend. And the foundation should be conservation. If you use less, that's the best way to save money. The next way to save money is using new equipment, maybe change it to LEDs, those kind of things. More efficient boilers and chillers. Definitely a good way to save money, but it does require upfront costs. Another way is to save on your demand, your peak demand that you use. And you notice the 2 big red checks on this slide. What that represents are the 2 ways that we are able to help save money in your organization. The last way is renewables, things like solar. Has a much smaller impact, has a lot more notoriety in the media, But when it comes down to it, conservation is really the way to focus. Go back to the story. Okay. So to give you an idea of what our program is, we embedded what's called an energy specialist into your organization. That energy specialist is supported by a team of specialists that we have throughout the country that come into your school district looking for ways, small and large, to save money in your energy use. We're projecting for this school district $659,000 and whatever it is, nearly $700,000 in savings over the next 5 years. That's about $130,000 per year. It's a program that is about changing the behaviors of the organization in small ways that over time, actually relatively quickly, that generate savings throughout the organization. It's critical that this program measures that effectively. And so we have software that we use that is available to the district to actually measure and verify those savings. The way that we structure this is we have what's called a quick start programs. For the first 4 months, there are no charges, no fees for our program. And the idea is that we want your program to be cash flow positive and to be paid for out of the savings in your energy spend. So the idea is, let's take 4 months, no charge. We're looking for savings immediately. Enough to basically pay that first invoice when you get it 4 months later. And for the rest of the program, again, the idea is for it to be cash flow positive, budget neutral. By the way, the savings are guaranteed. We guarantee that the cost of the program, that the savings in your program will exceed the cost of the program. We'll pay you the difference. You get that? It's guaranteed. The program is guaranteed. You can't lose money on your program. What are the chances that we have to pay you that money? It's about less than 0.5%. Actually, much less than that. Over the course of our program, 5,000 program years across 1,400 clients, we have 8 times paid that difference. Long-term benefits of this program: enhanced comfort. So we're not about just coming in and turning back the thermostat by any means. It is all about enhancing comfort. We're looking for ways, usually when there's a comfort problem, there's an inefficiency in the way that the infrastructure is in place. We diagnose, identify, and work with the maintenance department to figure out the best way to solve that problem. So long term, you save money. A big part of our program is creating a culture of conservation. It takes time to get an organization to change. There are early adopters, there's mainstream folks, there are folks who are a little bit slower to adapt. Our program is designed to accept that and work with people as they are, and over time we get to the savings that we're talking about. Typically, by the way, in the first 2 years, 70 or 90% of our clients reach their peak savings. Talked about some Long Island clients. Mr. Allen mentioned a few of them. There's also Suffolk County Community College. If you look at this slide, it shows you that there are different saving rates. I talked about 26% on average. However, this shows a variance. On average, this is about 20%, and part of it's because some of them are, actually all 3 are fairly early in their life cycle. I can tell you this, over the last 20 years, we've had 50 clients in New York that have tallied a total of $100 million in savings, with an average across the state of 23%. Oh, and by the way, one other client that just came on board that's in the area is Pace University, just signed with us last month. And here we are again. Okay, so I mentioned the benefits. Clearly, saving money is a key aspect of our program, but really we are looking to generate enhanced comfort. We require no capital up front. We certainly can advise on ways for you to maybe spend your capital in the best manner, so we can be an advisor to the school district. That's a key aspect of our program. And then from an operational standpoint, we've got, as I said, 50 different experts that range from boilers, chillers, moisture, the whole gamut of energy infrastructure that we can advise and provide the expertise to your organization to improve your operations. From a reputational standpoint, this program is designed to be measured at every single meter in the school district. So you can measure every meter on every month, quarter, and annually, and then you can look at every building and see how it's performing, and then the overall district, and be able to compare it from school to school to see how you're doing. And from an environmental standpoint, a lot of our programs have evolved into becoming cultural phenomenons really within the school districts, where green clubs start to sprout. And in some cases, some states will actually give you credits, and we've helped school districts get grants because of their good efforts. I know in my school district in Fairfax County, for example, we have 150 Energy Star schools and several Green Ribbon schools as well. I think that's just about it. These are just some of the clients that are in the news across the country, from California, I think, all the way to East Coast. I'm happy to talk more about it, but I know it's been a long night, so I'm gonna, unless you have questions, I'm ready to stand down.
I have a question. I'm just gonna go to Suffolk because they had the largest savings. So they saved 1.8 million, I'm gonna round it off. So they saved 1.8 million. How much was your fee for them to save the 1.8?
Without having that in front of me, I can't really tell you exactly what that is, but what I can tell you is, or what would be probably more beneficial would be if I hand you what yours would look like over the 5-year period. Would that be beneficial?
Oh, yeah, great.
Take a look at that.
Yeah, because William Floyd, you saved 27%, that's pretty significant, so, you know.
Yeah, so why is there a variance?
I'm looking for 35%.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, and you know, we have plenty of clients that are 35%. And what that represents is there are a variety of factors. Whenever you're trying to change an organization's culture, it takes time, and sometimes it's faster for some and not as fast for others. And also there are different stages. Some are at, for example, 12 months, 22, 37. So there are all different stages of their development. But let me show you what it looks like, what we're expecting for your district. Actually, I need one of these. Thanks.
Oops, sorry. Oh, I dropped it. Here, take that one. That's salad dressing on it. That's salad dressing.
I'm going to have to pull the glasses out for this too. So I talked about up front, $659,000 is what we're projecting. By the way, we are a conservative company. We like to under-promise and over-deliver. So our expectation is that we do much better than this. Our projection right here shows about a 22% savings over the next 5 years.
And this is based on Connetquot?
This is Connetquot. That's exactly right. This is our forecast. If you look at the top line, it shows you the gross savings per year, totaling out to $1.69 million over the 5-year period. The cost in the program, the energy specialist, which is included in our fee, and then the energy accounting software. And that's a third-party application called EnergyCap. What that does is it measures the actual performance based on your bills and your usage so that we can measure exactly what your usage is like from month to month, quarter to quarter, and so forth. We actually use that software not just to measure the performance of the program, but also trends of usage from building to building or from quarter to quarter, or looking at last February versus this February. Why is it different? So it becomes a diagnostic tool for us as well. That EnergyCap software is licensed directly from EnergyCap. And then there's the Synergistic Energy Management Program, which is a fixed fee across the 60 months. So after you extract the cost, then you will get the net savings, which, if you look at it, this is the bottom line. It shows the quick start period. That's the 4-month period where there are no fees. We're projecting $21,000 in savings. And then the performance years begin And you see 53,000 in savings, net savings to the school district. More than doubling in the second year. And then gradually ramping up to what we expect will be the savings. In fact, our goal would be much higher than this. This is our projection, conservative projection.
Is traditionally you do a 5-year period, why the 5-year period, the research as to why
Sure.
that
Yeah,
plays out that way?
Yeah, it's why we do 5 years, because whenever you do an organizational change, it doesn't happen like snapping on a light switch. It takes time to do it. And we invest an awful lot of resources up front to start to change habits, create habits that change the existing habits over time to the point where it becomes a culture. It takes about 2 or 3 years to get there, and then you want to have it sort of cement into place, and that's where we're then continuing, probably have less visits from the outside experts and more support directly from the energy specialists to ensure that all those best practices remain in place.
And what happens after the 5 years?
At the end of the 5-year period, actually probably about 6 months before the end of it, we'll come to you at that point in time and work with the school district to determine what you want to do next. And that could mean we're going to continue on with the way we're doing it, or we want to continue on with your program in some way, shape, or form. You know, candidly, things change over time. 5 years ago, we didn't have the suite of software tools that we have today, that we use internally. 5 years from now, maybe something totally different. So instead of locking in what is next after the program, we like to leave that open and then discuss it when it's closer to the end of the 5-year period.
So the total project investment is
Microphone.
So the total project investment is a little over $1 million.
That's right.
Is that including your fee into that?
Yeah, what that includes is the energy specialist is someone who, that's probably about 40% of that cost, is an energy specialist.
That's pretty significant. So I'm looking over here, it says, Synergic's fixed fee is paid at a monthly rate of $16,700. Could you explain that?
Sure, if you take that 208,000, I think it is?
208,400.
Sorry, 200,400 and divide that by 12. That should be 16,700 per month.
Oh, wait, say that again?
The 200,000,
Yeah.
400
Right?
divided by 12 months,
Yeah.
$16,700.
So I'm paying $16,000 so that I can save $1 million. I'm sorry, so I could save $659,000.
Right.
16,700 per month, correct. Over 60 months adds up to $1,002,000.
So I'm paying you $1 million, a little over, so I can save how much overall?
659,000. Now, bear in mind that of that, about 400,000 of that is the energy specialists themselves. But let me talk a little bit more about that individual. That's someone that we hired collaboratively with the school district, who is typically someone from the school district. It's often a former school teacher, coach, someone from the school community who cares about it, and they become the cheerleader and the expert in the program. And they are the face of the program and the boots on the ground that are working day in and day out in the program.
Do you see, I noticed in your numbers when you were talking about, and I know they're just averages, but I noticed you talked about a national average of 26% and then a New York average of 23%, and then the 3 numbers you have on the page, which happen to be all 3 Long Island schools, about 20%. Do you notice that trend? Because that's a typical trend in most things when you talk about economics. You know, it's more expensive in New York, and it's typically more expensive on Long Island, so you tend to see less, I guess, financial gains in certain situations. Is that something typical you're seeing? Do you have any other data on Long Island? There are only 3 companies, only 3 Long Island situations you've dealt with.
I would first of all caution to say that those 3 districts that we're showing right there are not at their peak savings yet.
Okay.
Okay, so
20%'s not bad. I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find out if that's a more realistic number that we're looking at.
we're totally expecting those to reach that a higher level for sure. 19 and 15% are not targets that we try to reach. we're not a company that advertises. It's all about word of mouth and references. So we have to have delighted customers to continue to grow. And so that's exactly what we'll be looking to do. So from a trend standpoint, New York is a pretty good sample in terms of the $100 million that we saved, $110 million actually, over the last 20 years across 50 clients, 23%. I couldn't say that that you see it geographically based. In other words, it's not like along the Hudson we're seeing a lot more savings or anything like that, or in Syracuse we're seeing more savings or less savings. It's not regionalized in that regard.
And just to clarify, so that I know I am, but so everybody else on the same page, what you explained before is we're going to essentially give you $1,030,918 over the 5 years. And if we only net $900,000 in savings, you're going to write us a check for $130,000.
I'd have to see the math.
Yes, that's
okay.
Okay, so this, so you, I mean, listen, I'm good to go. One of my board goals this year was to have a 0% increase in the budget. I think this is going to help. You're basically guaranteeing me 65% on my money in 5 years, so I'm good to go. You're taking $1 million and you're getting back 1.6 over 5 years. Couldn't get on the stock market. Well, maybe today, right now, for the last 3 months you could, but that's going to burst at some point.
Yep, it's guaranteed savings.
I'm good. It was guaranteed not loss. We don't look at it. So
That's correct.
I'm good. We don't know what the guaranteed savings, but it's a guaranteed not loss. I'm good. I don't know if you have more questions or not. We can't lose. Let's put it that way.
During the public comment.
We can't lose. Even if it comes up short, they have to pay us the difference. So it's, this is 65%.
Okay. Thank you. Presentation from facilities, advisory committee.
Hello, everybody. So approximately 10 months ago, we embarked on a set of conversations regarding the various pillars of the district. And one of them was also the creation of a facility division. At that point, 10 months ago, I introduced myself to approximately 20 different people that showed interest in the committee. I'm going to try to take 10 minutes to consolidate that 10 months worth of conversations and work so that everybody can appreciate it as snapshots.
Can you put the microphone up a little?
John, can you make it in 9 minutes?
9 minutes? It all depends on if you ask any questions.
I was at the committee, so I know all the answers.
So, I think it's important to know exactly who was on the committee. I didn't put them by name. People in the committee had been flowing in and out of it over the period of 10 months, but we had members of the Board of Education, the administration, staff, parents, and community members. Now that in itself is a nice cross-section, but when you look at the actual skill sets that the people in that committee brought, we had construction attorneys, we had project managers, licensed architects, educators, licensed engineers, community leaders, and chief engineers at a local college. So a really good cross-section of people that were capable of looking at the facilities in a very objective manner. So to go back to the initial charge that was given to us 10 months ago, to assess the current state of all of our facilities, propose changes needed to maintain the facility integrity and enhance the academic, arts, and athletic facilities for student programs. So that was the mantra that we had throughout the conversations. We then took that charge, put together a meeting schedule, and then started with various requests from administration and the foundation of the building condition survey. So every 5 years, one of the requirements of the district is to submit a 5-year building condition survey to S&D. That talks about the electrical in the district, the roof conditions, parking lots, basic infrastructure type stuff. And then we also had the individual requests from all the different administration. Additional to looking at that documentation an invitation was sent to all committee members, to tour each of the buildings. So we went around and looked at every single one of the buildings. High school we spent 3 or 4 hours in, some of the middle schools 2 or 3 hours, elementary schools 1.5 hours to 2 hours. So we spent a significant amount of time looking at the items that the administration requested as well as the elements within the building conditions survey. What you're going to see on the next several pages is a summary as to how that information shaped up into the committee's recommendation. We took all that information, we presented it to the committee, we broke it down into priority 1s and priority 2s, and then we had our district architect, who was only just brought on, and that in fact will be formally approved tonight as a district of record for these projects. And with those prices, we came up with some general ideas as to what we felt were higher priority and those that were not. What you see here is a cross-section of what those items that were priority 1. So we are looking at addressing playgrounds in every single one of the elementary schools. With that, we're going to keep an eye on the special ed population so that we can make sure that we have ADA compliance and equipment that's acceptable and suitable for their use as well. You'll see sidewalks everywhere. Those sidewalks, if you ever think about some of our playgrounds, they are not the most accessible at all. So we'll be able to bring sidewalks to the playgrounds. Several of the buildings have sidewalks that are in disrepair on the bus circles and on loops, various areas around. All that is included in that general sidewalk category. Casework. We just did a whole lot of work in the buildings replacing unit ventilators, and unfortunately we were not able to replace casework. So you'll see that there is an opportunity to replace casework so that we can get rid of some of the stuff that's 60, 70, 80 years old, depending on the building, that is old, deteriorated, and in sore shape. So that this would allow us to address some of that stuff. Abatement. District-wide, you're going to see an abatement line for every single building across the district. When I came to the board 2 years ago and we created the capital reserve, the word that I kept saying over and over again was abatement. And the reason why I reference abatement is because it's not cost effective for us to be able to do it on a day-to-day basis when we have problems. The cost is extraordinary. There is no state aid when we do it out of our general fund. Doing it through a capital project allows us to be universal and do a fair amount of it across the district, and we can maximize our state aid by doing it. Several people may remember this building a few years ago lost power in the middle of the winter. It was because the electrical service is in excess of 50 years old. It's underground. It's in a series of vaults in the ground. Those vaults fill up with water during the year. They also fill up with the salt that we put in our parking lots. As such, those utilities are suspect to the environment. I don't have the certifications, nor does anybody within the district have the ability to open up those vaults and inspect them. It's an expensive process. Doing it through a capital project is absolutely the best way to go. You see a line item for each of the buildings. That is not to say that that work is going to have to be addressed in every building, but we do need to do an assessment of it. Miscellaneous items in each of the buildings. Asphalt at Boston refers to the bus loop. We have flooding issues there. That will help us address the flooding issues. HVAC. We have certain areas in Boston that are not properly ventilated. Sycamore, there's a large number for HVAC. When that building was constructed and done, it did not have unit ventilators. It does not have mechanical fresh air, with the exception of exhaust fans. The proposal from the architect was that we should put unit ventilators in that building and mechanical fresh air. So that's in the proposal as well. Duffield, we have a couple of locations in that building that we need to address HVAC to bring it into the new code that went into effect December of last year. Masonry, there's miscellaneous masonry. Sycamore, we have spalling of the bricks. If you look at the exterior of the building, there are areas where the brick is actually separating and peeling. So they would need to chisel those bricks out and replace it with new two-through bricks into there. Pearl, that would address the entrance next to the gymnasium. If you look at the entrance of Pearl, the concrete is crumbling substantially, as well as sloping. one of the oldest buildings in the district. The original entrance for that building is in very dire straits, to the point where we don't have the ability to fix it during the general, within the general fund. Capital work is really the only way we're going to be able to address it properly. You'll see a gym ceiling and acoustics in Sycamore. For those of the people that have visited that building, they could readily identify the fact that the acoustics in there are horrible. It is like being inside of a tin can. So it echoes, it's loud, it's unbearable. Chip sealing is an abatement project, so that's in there as well. Exterior soffit talks to the metal framing around the exterior of Cherokee. There is an area where there is some plywood on the bottom of that soffit. It is totally rotten away. As such, we end up with a lot of bees in that building. We treat them to the best of our ability, but to go around and replace that soffit and do it properly, once again, is beyond the general scope of work that we can do on a year-to-year basis. Sycamore and Cherokee, we have drainage issues, and the parking lot in Cherokee is being considered because during peak time in that building, we have less, well, we have, the 3 times that I visited after this vote was brought to the committee was 4, 5, and 7 parking lots respectively on any given day. So we have the ability to extend the parking lot onto the play area, repave a certain area. That was included there as well. Next set of buildings on the next slide are Oakdale, Bohemia, and Ronkonkoma. Once again, abatement. Steam pipe and abatement, those buildings are both steam. They both have tunnels underneath the buildings, and we have a substantial number of elbows on that piping, as well as some piping itself in OBMS that is in serious need of replacement. And it's one of those situations where while we go down there and we do piecemeal repairs, the concern is when we start touching this and we start addressing it, we don't know where it's going to stop before we actually can get to a point and do it. So the architect, after reviewing it himself, recommends that we do it from start to finish. It is to that point. You'll see the LGI renovations in here. 2 years ago, when we were getting to the point of awarding the 2014 capital work, we increased the funding for that with the hopes of being able to address air conditioning in the LGIs in the middle schools. Unfortunately, the pricing that we received was 35 to 40% over for our HVAC, and we have not been able to address that work. This does set aside the funds to do that work finally. Septic system at OBMS is problematic. We've done additional venting, we've extended pools. We need an engineer to come in and give us some recommendations as to how to resolve the odors that are periodically float through the air down at OBMS. Once again, underground electric. HVAC, when we did the most recent project, we replaced a large number of unit ventilators district-wide. I believe the number was 116. The buildings that still have a lot of old unit ventilators, and when I say old, I mean in excess of 30 years of age. Even though they are currently working, and we are making them work, at some point they are going to fail, and they're going to start failing in great numbers, and they are not something that we can plan on. So to start putting a line item in the budget of $20,000 for each unit ventilator and have 30, 40 unit ventilators to start planning for, it is not the most practical way to do it. Not only that, I don't know how I could properly budget for it if need be. So you see that, you're going to see that both Oakdale, Bohemia, Ronk, and the high school. Asphalt, the bus loop at Ronkonkoma on the corner is a drainage issue. So we're going to have to put a couple curb cuts in there and put a couple more drainage basins. And the freight elevator. We have a freight warehouse. We have a warehouse in Ronkonkoma. There is an elevator that goes from the loading dock down into that warehouse. It is problematic to the point that we do not allow anybody to ride in the elevator. We put the freight back and forth, up and down in the elevator. But every time you enter into it or bring something into it, it drops 3 to 4 inches just because of the weight of the material. So it is a luxury that this district could not do without. That warehouse down there allows us to buy items in bulk, saving substantial amounts of money and making sure we always have materials on hand. So That is a very important piece of the system that we have. High school, abatement. Auditorium renovations. I don't know how many people have gotten to the high school and seen a production, but when we did the walkthrough with the committee, we stood in the back of the auditorium and we had to talk in hushed tones. And the reason why is because the sound in that auditorium projects from the back to the front. We need to do a complete renovation in that space in order to improve the acoustics. It'll start with the removal of the ceiling, opening up the space, creating more volume, removing ductwork, changing things around, putting a lot of aesthetic features into it so that it's an auditorium that would be something that the community and the program could be proud of. Electrical in the underground, we're going to address that as well. HVAC is what I talked about at the middle schools. We do not have currently a freight elevator to service the pool area at the high school. The pool has its own separate storage room in the basement. We don't have a way of getting materials down back and forth, so the staff ends up carrying 5-gallon pails up and down the stairs. They are very short, narrow stairs. We've had a few accidents already. A freight elevator should alleviate those problems. There is already a passageway for the space that an elevator used to be in, but over the decades it has deteriorated to the point that there is nothing there, literally. Field house. We look at the outside of the high school, we look at the size of the field, and we look at the amount of people that are at the high school at any given time. Putting a field house out there that I believe puts 6 stalls for women, 4 stalls for women, and a few urinals would alleviate the pressures on the building. It would also give us a more centralized location out in the fields for the community to appreciate and use while we're out there with all of our activities. The life skills classroom at the high school has not been updated, I would assume, in probably 30 years or more. As such, it is completely outdated and does not serve the children at the high school well at all. We have several recommendations to take 2 of the rooms, open them up so that we can create multiple small areas of instruction for those students and that program, and change the way it's laid out completely. We have masonry. At some point in the last couple of weeks, we were talking about the pool. This is actually masonry on the outside of the pool that's not visible from the road, but above the roof there are some areas that are in serious need of attention. Library flooring. If anybody's been up in the library recently, you'll see that there's carpet up there that has runs that are 20, 30, 40 foot in length. I don't know exactly when the flooring was put in. I assume it's original back in '02. But it's at a point where it needs to be replaced. The recommendation is to go back with carpet squares so that we won't have the issues with runs, and we can update the carpet in sections as opposed to its entirety moving forward. We have a guidance suite on here. The guidance suite used to be the library. It's on an interior courtyard. We had issues with that wall leaking. In the past year, I've been brought into that space several times to address moisture on the floor, on the walls, and doing some evaluations with the architect and some other outside contractors. We have learned that the interior clip system that holds that entire wall together, which is a series of panels, is rotting and decaying. It is an expensive proposition, but it is not one that we really have a lot of flexibility with. If we're going to be doing that, there has been a review of the guidance suite. This is a topic that I think needs to be a little bit more vetted out. We're going to get some more details on it to itemize what the actual renovation looks like. But we do know that when it was constructed, we did not remove the air conditioning and ventilation units that were in the library at the time, and we just reutilized them for the existing footprint and the guidance suite. In doing that, we have many units that are oversized for the small offices that they're located in, and it's causing other ventilations within the suite that need to be looked at and addressed. The music rooms, we have a tremendous music program in the district. The rooms themselves aren't necessarily set up to the best use of the program. We have some core rooms that are very small with some built-in risers. We have some larger offices between some of the music rooms. The music staff themselves asked whether or not it would be possible to remove their offices so that they could open up the spaces for more instructional use. That is a great solution, so we have built up some prices for those renovations as well. A couple of the locker rooms, the main locker rooms for the boys and girls, we had issues with the showers. Upon reviewing those showers, we realized that neither one of those locker rooms are ADA compliant. They actually have a tile threshold that causes the water to collect in there. Makes sense because you want to keep the water in the general area, but by putting a threshold there, we are not ADA compliant. So if we're going to be doing any work in the locker rooms, we have to bring them into compliance and make them ADA accessible. In addition, a review of the fields, the architect identified the fact that the press box is not necessarily code. It is not something that's come up in any kind of conversations with the fire marshal or anybody else, but if we're going to be doing this kind of work, it is the opportunity to do it and bring it into code. Beyond the high school, we have a couple of new buildings. Central office. The roof on this building is the only one, or I should say is the oldest building. This is a foam roof, a blown foam roof. It is a roof that I refuse to go on because I'm afraid that if I walk across it, I'm going to do more damage than I'm going to be able to identify and fix. It is a problem. We go up there with pails of tar every year in the spring, and we put it on rolls. So this is the roof that absolutely needs a lot of attention. It's not only the roof on the second floor, but it works its way all the way over to the transportation base. Additionally, we're looking at putting a maintenance building and a sand salt shed, moving equipment out from underneath the high school and bringing it to a more centralized location here in the transportation yard. In particular, the sand salt shed, if people aren't familiar with it, for the district of this size, we end up having between 60 and 100 yards of sand salt that we stored in the basement of the high school beneath the gymnasium. Salt by its very nature is a caustic material. I would love to be able to get that out of the building and into a more centralized location in the district where it's not going to cause problems down the line. At Pren, we have some ceilings that are old spline ceilings. They are old and problematic. We spend a lot of time down there patching and repairing them. While we're doing it, we replace the lighting as well. And then there is casework down there that is probably 60 to 80 years of age. They actually used floor tiles, 9x9 floor tiles, as the countertop for the casework down there. So considering the program that we have down there, the condition that the casework is in, I strongly recommend, and the committee agreed, that we should be addressing the casework down there. So, I'm sorry that was not 9 minutes.
That's way more than 9
I have
minutes.
two, one is a question and one is an explanation. I was actually at Sycamore today, and Mr. Collins was gracious enough to invite me, but I did notice that the gymnasium is very cold.
So,
And I know it's not on here, I'm just...
no, that is part of the 2014 project that is currently being done. The BMS system, which is the building management system that will control the heat for us, is going to be commissioned 8 o'clock Friday morning. I will be doing a little celebration when that happens. We have 2 brand new units, rooftop units. If you actually look out during the daytime over the cafeteria, you can see the units. The problem is we don't have, because it's new equipment, it's not tied to our old BMS system, so we do not have the ability to control the set points and adjust the temperature in there. As of Monday morning, that would be adjusted.
Awesome. While you're at the podium, I guess if you could just go over the secret resolution.
So CEQA it's a resolution that we're going to see on the agenda for tonight. It's in response to the transfer to capital. That was the work that we transferred $2.5 million out of last year's budget to various projects, very specific projects. The boilers at Slocum. We have 2 boilers at Slocum that are past their prime by several years. We've actually had Hartford Steam Boiler, which is the company that inspects our boilers and insures them, saying that they will not certify them. So we keep nursing them along. We have that redundancy, but because of those problems last year, the board and the community was gracious enough to set aside money in the capital reserve. There's that piece of it. There's a small boiler in transportation. There's one at Pren. We have parking lot issues down at Idle Hour. So we have some miscellaneous projects that total at $2.5 million. As such, any capital work that's going up to SCD has to go through what is called the secret review. That is the State Environmental Quality Review Act. What they're doing is they're making sure that if you're changing the footprint of the building, that you're not causing any adverse conditions. So when we go to do any work at the high school, if we're doing anything in the fields, because it's close to the Connetquot State Park, they're going to want to make sure it's not going to have any kind of negative environmental impact. The projects that we're doing with the transfer to capital are all interior projects, so they are not going to, there's no environmental impact. It's still a process that needs to be done.
So when can you expect the work to be done?
So I asked that question directly of John Grillo. He told me that we would be able to get the boilers done next summer. So I have a feeling he's going to be pulling in a few chips, because the process up at SED right now is, I believe they said most recently, about 40 weeks for review and approval, if everything is perfect. But because of the nature of it, because it was, because of the need, I think he's going to call in some favors and he's going to get a fast track. Much in the same way that we were able to do an emergency resolution when we came out of exec last week to do the rooftop unit at the library, over the high school. So because of the scope of the work that's local, we could do the same thing for that, but to try to change 2 boilers out at this time of the year is,
Yes.
I don't sleep enough as it is.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your information.
I have a question.
Sure.
Speaker.
Can you do all the acoustics?
I can hear.
Correct. I think what's going to happen in the auditorium specifically, because it's such a large price tag, once we start getting a little bit of feedback from the Board of Education, then we're going to start dialing in the scope. And what will happen at that point is, you know, we'll get together with the architect and we'll actually come in and show you what you're going to get for those monies.
Right, because if you don't change the acoustics, why bother doing anything?
100%. And that was one of the things that Mr. Grill assured us, was he guarantees the acoustics to be significantly improved.
And the lighting?
We will be addressing everything. The ceiling's going to come down so that we can open up and create more space. That's the first way to improve the acoustics. When he does that, all the lighting's going to come down. We will be doing decorative work on the back instead of having carpeting on the back wall. I'm sure there's going to be some proposals to do some probably wood paneling relief on the sides. If you know,
So
we
you're
will
doing a
dial
partial,
those in.
you're doing a partial gut job, but you're not removing the seats, you're not removing, it's almost a partial gut.
The seats are okay, the seats are good.
Yes, I'm saying it's partial gut.
Yeah,
It's
so
not part, it's a big job, it's a big job.
aside from the seats,
What about the room where, the ticket room? Is that gonna be looked at as part of the auditorium?
we will make sure it's part of it. We will make sure. We just, when we went into that space and we spoke to the staff, it was not an area that they brought up as a primary concern. But as we get into it and as we fine tune it, all of those things have to come into the conversation. A little bit of the problem we have right now is, I was hoping that as a facility committee, we would be able to present a little bit earlier to the Board of Education. The problem is we had a hard time getting John Grillo fully on board. So without him fully on board and fully invested in the project, it's kind of hard. It was very hard to get prices. So he's done a lot of work up front for us, even without contracts in place. But to invest much more than that would have been a bit of a stretch. So now that the information is at the board's level, when you review it, as you start reviewing it, the more information or the more questions you have, the more I can fine tune the information and get you the details you need so that you can define the final scope of work. And my understanding is if we're going to be able to put it on the May resolution, we need to be very close to that point at the end of February.
Right, because even with, whoever does the keyboard or whatever they do.
Sound system,
Sound
everything,
system,
yep.
that just sits there. It's not doing what we do.
Understood. Understood. All of that, so I can tell you from first-hand experiences, Mr. Grillo went into classrooms and he was talking to the staff. He had extensive conversations with the music staff. He had extensive conversations with special ed staff. He is going to get their input first and foremost. He's going to blend that together, try to create a vision from other work that he's done in other districts, and then that will be presented for yourselves for either a thumbs up or no.
My concern, not a fear, concern I have is you only have so much money, so you can do a little here, a little there, and not do any one room right. That's my concern.
Totally agree.
So,
Totally agree.
my concern is that room, I mean, that place, that's the way it was when they added new chairs. That room has been the way it was since since the building was done.
Loud and clear.
So, you know, it's time to do it and do it right, not just to do it, you only have so much money and then leave the rest for whatever.
I have a hard time thinking that Mr. Grillo would put his name to anything that he didn't think would stand the test of time. And while I was not here for the approval of the 2014 project, I'm going to tell you personally right here, right now, I won't put my name on anything unless I feel 100% confident that it's going to stand the test of time.
So John, does that mean new technology, music technology, lighting, speakers?
It has to be the thing.
It's going.
I was wondering, yeah.
It's going, well, I mean, I would think, you know, when you say technology, there's not a whole lot of technology except for lighting and sound. The one piece that I would
the
make.
sound system when the kids work off the keyboard, I mean.
Yeah, but those systems are going to be absolutely replaced and they're going to be state of the art, as per the proposal. The other thing that I would recommend is that we put a drop-down projector. So instead of sitting there setting up a small little projector and trying to angle it and make it fit up on the stage, we put the appropriate equipment in there so that we can do presentations. And that's a small cost in the overall scheme of things, but it will be incorporated. I'm sure of it.
We invested a lot of money so far in athletics. And I love athletics, but now it's time for the music department. So I'm going to support them at this point. Because we did invest a lot of money in the fields, the turf, and a couple of different tracks. We've had a couple of tracks the time I've been here at the high school. So I don't want the arts to get neglected because we only hit them on those sports.
The committee agreed that there needs to be a large focus on the arts. That came out of the committee, and I think you can attest to that piece of it. I mean, I think when you look at the LGIs in both middle schools, when you look at the auditorium in the high school, when you look at the music suites and everything else, I think that concern and that message was heard.
Thank you, John.
I have a question for the gentleman behind you. Just one question. I don't remember your name. Will you be working with our business office to get these numbers, or are you just going to be working over meters to see how much kilowatts you're saving?
We work with the business office and the maintenance department, and we make regular reports to the board in concert with them as well. So it's a real integrated partnership.
Okay, so that's all.
On policy, motion second to approve the first meeting. First reading. Just the second reading? Okay. Motion and second.
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion and second to abolish the second reading. Motion. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any questions or discussion? No, all right. Moving on to public comment. It's 30 minutes in length. This section of the agenda gives the Board of Education an opportunity to recognize persons who wish to raise a question or to make a brief statement on agenda matters only. All other topics will be recognized as time allows. The time available will be limited to 3 minutes for one or more topics. Comments should be kept as brief as possible and relate to school matters. Persons wishing to speak are asked to adhere to the following guidelines. Step to the podium, address the board president only. You may address one or more topics in the time allotted. Individual employees, parents, or children should not be identified by name, title, position, grade, or building. For safety, please exit from the podium after your time has concluded via the front of the podium and circle around to the left or right to return to your seat. Okay. Hello.
Hello, I'm Rocky Angela Heisman. I've been here a few times. I thought it was very good that we looked at the Regents scores today because in line with how we're looking to use the Regents. I find it really dismaying to see that we have kids pass the Regents, but our mastery levels are so low. And I think that's really something we need to look at, because that's telling me that these tests aren't necessarily really showing what our students are capable of, which brings us back to how these tests are being used in the scoring. Now, I was part of the original committee with regards to the Regents, and one of the biggest concerns of the teachers is the APPR. These Regents should, and our kids should not be put in a position to be taking tests that are not valid. I'm sorry, the geometry Regents, I looked at the different scores and stuff like that. The math, 10% mastery across the board in the Regents is not, to me, a very good result for our district. Okay, that means the kids are getting 65 or below 85 on the scores, between 85 and 65. And that's not really good mastery. And then we're using these tests. So is it showing mastery? Because that's what the teachers really were concerned about in the use of Regent scores, is they need an assessment of the student mastery. But I don't really necessarily think that these tests are a reflection, especially the math and science, of actual mastery. The other thing I wanted to ask Mr. Littleman, if we have any record of how our kids are doing on the SAT and the ACT, on the ELA and the math, since Common Core has come about. Is it correlating? Are kids doing well in, not doing well in the district on the Regents test, but then doing better on an SAT or an ACT? And same thing with the, for both the math and the ELA. And you know what? Personally, I'm not seeing it. My daughter was an 11th grader, and she called English read and regurgitate. Read and spit back what you got. You know what? You got a 98 on the Regents, but that doesn't mean she's proficient in writing for everyday life. So, you're talking about taking a different direction. The Common Core standards are probably part of the problem. You were talking about gen ed and changing of the standards, but in the meantime, our kids are sort of caught in the middle of all of this. And I still don't think that those tests reflect mastery. And so to include them in an average when you're talking about kids trying to go to school, and I just don't think it's fair. And I think that do no harm is really a better policy. And to be honest with you, 3 parents were on the committee, 6 people, and it was split between parents and teachers. And it's, you can't hold on to Regents because of an APPR. Change the APPR or adjust it. But, there's got to be other ways to measure a teacher's, skill besides a Regents test. Then, I just think that we need to consider that as we look at this. And again, look at our Regents scores. You look at our mastery scores. Again, passing is not good enough. Mastery is what we're looking for. And if you're saying 35 out of 80 questions is mastery, as a parent, and as a teacher and as an educator, that's not mastery. So I think that we really need to look at this a little bit more seriously and do what's best for the kids, and not necessarily, hold on to it because it's part of APR. Change APR. Go back and find another way. Deal with the teachers, but it's up to them first. Thank you.
I just want to mention that Mr. Costa made recommendations to you guys. You're the Board of Ed, and you guys get to decide how you want to do it. So whether you take his recommendation, or you take another approach, the way a lot of people have been coming up and talking about do no harm policy, that's your choice. So any decision that you make is up to you guys. I know that you can take recommendations, but remember there's been a lot of parents that have come up here and said, do no harm to these kids with no Regent score. So I urge you to consider that. There's a lot of information presented tonight, and I probably have like a million questions that I'm going to ask you, Linda, and I just wanted to let you know that in advance. Are we having a second public portion? I saw that on the agenda this morning. I don't know if you changed it. For the consent agenda?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll talk about that stuff later then. Thank you.
Years ago, before any of you were even sitting here, we hired a company to save us money. Remember it? Okay. I don't know if they ever save this on nickels.
The energy bond you're talking about?
What?
No, no.
The energy bond?
No, not talking about any bonding. I'm talking about the company that couldn't fulfill their obligation because at the end, they said the equipment was falling apart as they were trying to service it. And they couldn't get parts. And I don't know what parts are so sophisticated to a heating system that you can't get off the catalogs and off the internet. They did do some work, yes. We got some new windows, I believe, in this building. We got some new lighting, which today is inefficient, because at that time, LED did not exist. And if you change to LED, you have to do the whole room, because you can't have one light brighter than the rest. They got us some setback thermostats. They got us some room occupancy sensors. That means that when there's no one in the room and there's no motion, the lights go off. All well and good. You can do this yourself in your own home. But I don't know if, in the end result, they ever lowered our electric bill, which is going to go up anyway, like it or not, because PSE&G says we have to make good, for all the damage that took place on Long Island from the hurricanes. And, well, at least, I don't know if they lowered our gas input. I don't know if that time they installed any new boilers. But the end result was not good, and they had a good rep. Their rep was so good that when I looked on the internet, they worked on that building in Dubai, which I believe is the tallest in the world. They had a good rep, but they couldn't fix our hot and cold rooms at the high school because they couldn't get the parts. They knew what they were getting into. I assume they walked around every building. They knew that the high school has pneumatic controls where the tubing is buried in concrete and in walls and you can't see it and you don't know when there's going to be a pinhole leak. They knew what they were getting into, yet they didn't perform. Please, be prudent in what you get yourself into and have your lawyers read it.
Thank you, Ed.
Good evening. Good morning. I had a fairly impassioned response about the transcript committee, and then I listened to Mr. Greenwell's thoughts, and I realized I agree with an awful lot of what he says.
Move the microphone up,
I don't know if we should be saying, if you do poorly, you won't count it. Because life really isn't like that. But the primary concern for not adopting a do not harm policy, from what I've seen and read on these spreadsheets on PowerPoints, is that students will cease to have motivation to do well on the exam. That seems to be the crux of the concern, the majority of it. Hopefully that's the majority of the concern. I don't agree that Regents score should be a barometer of teacher performance. That's obviously not something we can control, especially when these exams are under such scrutiny, not necessarily flawed, but under scrutiny. However, if we don't want to squash motivation, why wouldn't we allow a student who passes but is unsatisfied with his or her score to retake the exam and have that new score come? That seems to be direct opposition to the intent of why to not adopt a do not harm policy would exist. So I agree we shouldn't promote an if you don't do well it won't count attitude. I don't agree that every student will simply now say they'll stop trying, but some might, and that is concerning. And when I think about what bothers me about the recommendation, there's two things. One, the fact that these tests are still so maligned, justly or unjustly, and two, that we tout the importance of motivation, but we're willing to say that for two students with an 85 average, who both have a bad day and a day with Regents, if one does poorly enough to get to 64, he can go back and take it again and have that new score count and be calculated and do wonderfully. And if someone else has a bad day and scores 66, you can't improve upon it. We're going to tell you, sorry, we're not happy with you improving your score. So let's not say it won't count if you do poorly, but we should still try to ensure that our kids consistently try hard the first time, and if they still want to improve upon their score, they can consistently try the second time and the third time, and they have the option to do so.
I look at it this way, the kid's gonna give up his summer to improve his score, why wouldn't I recognize that and acknowledge that?
All right. Moving on to recommended action, personnel matters, Schedule 1, resignations, terminations, leaves of absence.
Motion,
Second.
all in favor?
In favor. Schedule 2, appointments, tenure, salary changes.
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have a, no? Okay. Recommended action, financial matters. Need a motion, a second to approve
Motion.
items 2 through 6. Second? Second. Any discussion? Questions?
Other than just thanking those young ladies from the Girl Scouts, but we did that already, so I'm good. And I asked John the secret question, so we're good at that. I'm good.
All right. Consent agenda, items 2.
Vote on 2 through 6 first.
Oh,
All in favor?
All in
in
favor?
favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda, items 2 through 21. Need a motion?
Motion.
Any questions, concerns? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Reports are. Have any reports?
I'll save mine for next meeting.
Okay. Dr. Adams?
I just
Linda,
wanna
3 minutes.
I'm gonna do less than 3 minutes.
That's what
As
John
long as
said.
there's no questions.
Oh, John.
How'd that bus feel?
So, I do want to reiterate and congratulate our girls varsity volleyball team who won their 3rd consecutive Long Island Championship last weekend, and who will be representing us at the States in Glens Falls this weekend. But I also want to congratulate our girls swimmers, because we have 6 separate events that our girls swimmers have qualified for to represent us as well in the States this weekend. And I would also like to congratulate our female gymnasts, because we have 3 female gymnasts who will be going up and competing in all of the different events in the States as well. So we've had an extraordinarily successful fall. Our football team, although they were defeated on Saturday, went very far through the playoffs. Our girls soccer team made it into the playoffs. It was a really successful season, and our kids should really be proud of how hard they worked and how successful that they were. If you did not get a chance to see Don't Dress for Dinner, it was hysterical. Their pacing and their timing and their walking and talking over each other and their physical comedy, it's astounding how talented our kids are, and it was really fun to see. So, thank you. I think that was less than 3 minutes.
Thank you, Linda.
No problem.
Any administrator?
Don't even start, Dean.
Good?
Just, you did receive an invitation for a visit to Kidoyo. Kidoyo is a platform that we're bringing onto the district. It's a computer science platform for our students to be used both inside at school, K through 12, and also outside of school. We are setting up other visitations so that you can see the program around people's schedules too. So please, if you're
Oh,
interested.
when did you send that invite out?
I don't know if Andrea, yeah.
I sent it
When did you send it?
this week,
7 minutes ago?
on Monday.
Monday?
Yeah,
All right, I'll have to check back on Monday.
I think it's on the 27th, right?
27th, yes.
It's on the calendar.
It's
Okay.
it's an amazing program, and we're currently implementing it in our computer science courses at the high school. We're doing, we have 2 scheduled parent nights where parents and children are going to come together at the high school computer labs, introduce them to the program, let them use it outside of school. It's going to be It's gonna be a game changer for us and a real enhancement to our STEM education program, K through 12.
And that's a Monday.
That's it.
It's in there.
Yeah, so it has, it has, it's,
Part of it.
Somebody go right during the day or?
yeah, you guys.
All right,
Go with that, Rob, dot.
thank you. All right, we'll move, anyone else?
I'll report next time.
All right. Moving on to the final public comment. To go to everything I said before.
What was the first thing? Oh, trips. You have a lot of trips on there. I want to make sure that if there's a student that cannot afford to go, that there are funds available to that student.
Yes.
For all curricular trips, yes.
Aren't all trips curriculum based? Don't we, isn't
Yes.
that one of the rules?
We make sure that all students have accessibility to the trips.
Curriculum based is the new terminology now. So I want to make sure, I was told in several other videos that all trips were used, but I've also been told that all trips that are approved to go on a school trip has to be curriculum based, and if you look at the sheet that they fill out, it's on the minutes, it has to have a reason that says how it's related to curriculum based. Some of them just say high school trip, or
Some provide separate documentation.
Right. Right, things like that, but they all supposed to have a rationale on there that is based on curriculum. So that would mean, then, to clarify, that all of the kids that can't afford to go on those trips do have funds to be able to go on those trips.
So we're talking about specific trips now, Ms. Panico.
Yes, we are.
And you're using a platform right now that's a little uncomfortable. I just want to say that out loud.
No, I'm asking this question for other people in the district that may not know that. So the platform that you're saying, you're insinuating something that is a private conversation that we'll have as well.
Okay. Our curriculum trips,
Can you stop my time?
our trips that are through our classes, let's use a different terminology. So if I have a marketing class that's going into the city to go on tour, yes, there is 100% a fund for kids for that. When I talk about a trip that's a little bit less tied to a class, the student government and the classes have found funds to fund about half of most of those trips for the kids who need it. So that's where there's a slight difference.
That was never communicated before though. And the rule that I was aware of was that all trips had to be curriculum based.
So really we need to look at trips like Rocking Horse Ranch and see if there's a curriculum that's being covered in that.
Well, I was even talking about the one that's on the, there's one on the agenda tonight that they're going to do rides and things like that.
Is it a physics trip?
It's the 8th grade trip to the Pocono Valley Ranch. is what I'm assuming.
I think that's the one. It's been a long night, Nick, so I'm not sure.
I mean, I'm assuming that's the other one.
I wasn't really,
The other ones are to
that's just an
medieval
example that
times.
was on there tonight.
Yeah, the other one's to medieval times, which have a curriculum attached to them.
Right.
And they have
You
a-
go in 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 10th grade,
And they
11th
have a
grade.
program
Yeah,
at the,
plenty of those trips.
they're acceptable through BOCES to Arts and Ed as well, because they have a
Right.
program that goes along with
Right.
it.
But we do 8th grade trips, we do 9th grade trips, we do 10th grade trips, and all it says on the thing, and the rationale is, it's been done in the past and it's been very successful.
Yeah.
So, I thought that the Board of Ed was only supposed to approve trips that were curriculum based.
It's part of the policy, so I'll have to look at
Right.
the policy.
Okay, just want to check on that. All right, and the other question was that I brought up at the last meeting, and the lawyer that I brought it up to is not here tonight. We talked about the casino support, we talked about the support for the hub, opposition to those things. And now she was looking into writing a letter to support the Island Hills, to stop the zoning change in the Island Hills. So I wanted to know what the outcome was that. It's been a month. So October 17th actually was the last meeting, so it's been what, 3 weeks? Yes, we were gonna write a letter. No, the lawyer was supposed to come up with what you guys can do. And then coincidentally, Brentwood came out in the newspaper
Oh, yeah, go
suing
Brentwood.
something else for the same question that I asked on the 17th. that happened to come out, what, a week later?
They're arguing the impact that the developer says is going to have on the schools.
Correct, which would be what will happen with South Island Hills.
1,500 students,
With Island
where
Hills.
Brentwood's claiming it's more like 7,000.
Oh, yeah.
Correct, right, which is pretty much Island Hills, you're putting in 1,400 apartments, there's gonna be an impact on the school district. So,
Stop the time for a second. Did they
Yeah, but
base that?
I don't think that, I mean, I don't know what the actual, if we've done an impact study, but you know, it's not just the fact that there is an impact, it's the fact that there's a discrepancy in the impact is what they're fighting.
No, they
Everybody
base it-
realizes there's going to be an impact, just like there would be an impact here. The question is the discrepancy in the impact.
well,
And the
my
way it's
question
being
is just,
reported
what was the lawyer's answer to being
Yeah.
able to write a letter?
Yeah. So
Did we get that?
I don't have,
No.
no.
Okay, when will we know about that, Lindsay? Do you know? Thank you. And I'll call you tomorrow on your personal question, thank you.
That's a statistic, but in that, we could do it in my area, we could do it over there. I need to see it. Yeah, Ocean. Ocean's fine now.
motion, adjourn? We have a small exec, don't we?
You're, come on, are you all serious?
We have like 10 minutes.
Yes.
Come on.
Motion to enter into executive session. Motion.
Motion. I second, first, second, third.
Favor?
Aye.
Good night, everyone. Good night, everybody. Thanks for coming. Good night, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming.
I've been dying to do that all night. Oh, it's a list.